Just love your smile. Just the way you do it makes me high all night. I just love your smile. Just the way you do it makes me high all night.
Can you smile again?
I just love your smile. Just the way you do it makes me high all night. I just love your smile. Just the way you do it makes me high all night. Baby, I just love the way you smile. It's that smile that makes me wild. Every time you really smile for me, yeah, I feel so invincible.
Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 170th live stream from the MisfitGamersStudios. I am your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. On today's episode, we have a fun topic. This is going to be the history of action economy. This is going to be everything from all of the things that D&D says that you can do, primarily in combat, but we're also going to look at some out of combat aspects, but we're going to see how everything changed from 1st edition all the way to 5th edition, on what type of actions you were allowed to take, what they were called, and exactly when you were allowed to take them. So I hope you enjoy that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, we do have a couple quick updates though. Cool. Oh, yours is hella dark for some reason. Hold up.
Hella dark.
Why are you hella dark?
We don't look that. We don't need all that. Oh yeah, I do look pretty dark. Dog.
There we go. That's a little better, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trying to be the next Batman, yeah. All right, so quick on the updates before we get into today's topic, primarily community streams. So we just put a whole bunch of polls up in the Discord for next month's community stream, this month's community stream. Poll went up for April. So
Yep.
that one will probably happen in the next week or two on a weekend. So get those votes in and we will decide the topic / theme. And then we have the community stream for May going on right now. I saw that we already got 4K put in already, going strong with
course.
Sol and Hecate getting that one in. And that one will, of course, try to be squeezed in next month. We have a couple other polls that I threw in there. I think everybody was pretty much unanimous. We got a lot. I was actually really surprised with how many people voted today.
I think Cosmic is the only person that voted different on the homebrew layout.
Really interesting. Yep. And yeah, no, it was crazy because usually we don't get a lot of votes in that channel. So I'm really happy we got some. I'm actually checking the feed right now. So wow, we got 7 votes. Wow, that's awesome. Right. Okay, so it does look like so far for the homebrew review, it does look like everybody likes us being above the content instead of down in the corner. So I think that's going to be a more permanent change, not a problem. Let's see what else. For the history of an educational like today, they do prefer the visuals. They prefer to have some sort of read along instead of just floating heads like just, what we have right now.
I might have missed that poll. I didn't see that one.
That was the second one. There's 3 polls out right there. In just this is in the polls chat. So that one was interesting because I thought for the educational ones, things like history of, or when we do our deep dive, I figured those ones would still be more likely to be wanted to be. What am I trying to say? I felt like those would be more interesting as like podcast segments, audio only,
right.
Something you put us in the background, something that, if you have YouTube Premium, you would just like, lock your screen and just have on like in the car.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting that people wanted visuals for that.
Okay, something to read along with and participate in. And
I don't know how well that's going to translate to YouTube, but I'm probably sure that those will translate better than just floating heads on YouTube. So we're gonna see how that plays out. But I'm glad to see that there was a lot of votes for that. That one was 4 votes having the ability to read along. Yeah.
Okay.
4 votes to 0. We had 6 votes to 0. Or no, we had 5 votes to 1 on the review being top and separate versus down at the bottom. And then the last vote is which camera style do they prefer in general? This, which is the cameras are a little bit further away and we're both, partial body.
Okay.
Get body language, get hand movements. And the other option was if we were to zoom in the cameras, more of like how you see a lot of people do, where it's just the floating head.
Got you.
And it was pretty much unanimous, 7 votes. So the highest rated one, 7 votes unanimously. They prefer this.
Everybody.
If we're on camera, they want the zoomed out version. So I like that. I'm very happy that everybody participated in those votes. That's really happy. Makes me really happy to see. The community stream is out. Holy shit. April community stream already has 5 votes.
5 votes.
Jeez,
Wild.
people are on it right now. Do we even have 5 people in chat? Don't even have 5 people in chat, but we do have 5 people in Discord. All right.
Wild.
So what are these results? We have 3 votes for critical cocktails and 2 votes for tavern tangents. People want to see us get drunk. Like, it's official. People want to find that. Like, they've been like, hey, look, you've been creating some good stuff. The sublet and subclasses, the pop culture builds. Look, we like that. We like it. But you know what? I need to see you drunk. I need to see you shit-faced. Consume alcohol is what
copious amounts.
That is what
of
I'm hearing. Is you
intoxication.
need me to consume the alcohol, and that's what we're gonna do. But that's 5 votes. Critical cocktails. So for anybody who's new, critical cocktails is an episode where we will take community suggestions from the community, whether it's from the Discord or live in chat, where the community will give us a name for a drink. That's it. That's all we get. Similar to image to item, but we are going to do name only. Chat gives us a name. And from there, it is our job to craft a drink, a lore and ingredients based off of the drink name alone.
Okay.
I actually did this by myself at one point. It was really fun. We got 3 drinks made out of it that episode.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
And so that was really fun. Haven't had a chance to try them just yet, but we will. So yeah, so Critical Cocktails is basically just that. You and me coming up with lore and ingredients. And if we have the ingredients, we will craft that particular cocktail live on stream. And then Tavern Tangents is basically just, or I'm sorry, was it Tavern Tangents or Tavern Tastings that they did? No, Tavern Tangents. Oh, I didn't put Tavern Tastings on here.
Oh, is that what it was supposed to be?
Well, I think I was supposed to have both, and I didn't put both. So 2 people voted for Tavern Tangents, which I don't know if they thought was Tavern Tastings. Actually, that was what you and Vixie voted for.
I thought it was just going on tangents in the tavern.
Well, that's what it is. So Tavern Tangents is different than Tavern Tastings. Tavern Tastings is when we do an alcohol tasting.
Yeah.
Like we did with the whiskey, where we actually walk through it all. That's just that's like really not even D&D themed, unless we do a D&D themed cocktail at the end.
Sure.
But Tavern Tangents is specifically where you and I sit there. It was originally planned for beer, but we could do cocktails. But it was going to be you and me in the tavern. Chat gives us a topic, and we just steadily drink over that topic, kind of like the YouTube Drunken Histories.
Yeah. I like that a lot.
That was kind of the idea. We get
is-
topics, and we just sit there and drink and talk and drink and talk and drink and talk until we can't talk no more.
That sounds like a vibe. That is what I was voting for.
Okay, so that's what you were voting for, but everybody else wants the critical cocktails. They want the creations. They want the stuff that we make.
I get it.
I love you guys too. Like that's all I'm saying.
For sure.
You like what we make. That's great. We need to get Jaeger for the cocktails. Yes. You
Jaeger
want
bombs.
Jaeger.
Jaeger
I told
bombs.
y'all I will not put Jaeger in the tavern. It cannot come from me, and it will not come from me. There's a few bottles that will only there's like not a lot, but there's a handful of things that they'll only be in there if someone brings them in.
donates it.
Because there's just some things I just won't buy.
Watch somebody Amazon gifts you a bottle of Jaeger.
The first time we open up a PO box, boom, bottle of Jaeger.
Why?
All right. Well, it looks like it's just Sol and Hecate today. That's all I see. I don't know. The Twitch layout is kind of weird. Sometimes I get an accurate chat count, and sometimes I don't.
It's super weird.
So I don't know what we're officially sitting at right now. But
There's somebody called Shadow hanging out in there, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm only showing 2, so that's why I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know how often that thing updates or if it updates effectively or whatever, but whatever.
I don't know. Spam an emote in chat if you're here. How about that?
Yes.
It's always nice
Emotes
to know
in
who's
chat.
actually paying attention. Throne wish list. There you go. Maybe I should do a throne wish list for alcohol.
Throne wish wild.
Right?
Okay. I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
You know, no, I couldn't do that. That'd probably be against terms of service. No. I was gonna say, like, if we can do, if something can't go on throne, I could have a secret wish list. And in order to get those, you have to buy the equivalent of like subs.
Oh, really?
So, give me the equivalent, but I don't know if that would actually work, and I don't know if I'd be allowed to do something like that in terms of service wise. Like, there's certain things that
Fair enough.
like skirt the line of allowance. All right, well, that's at the half hour mark. I know we started a little bit late, but that's all right. Okay, not too bright. Yeah, I think yours is fine.
We are chilling. We are chilling. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna run to the bathroom and I will
All right,
be
all right.
back.
Well, once he gets back, we will actually, you know what? Maybe while he's gone, I will set up everything that he hasn't seen yet. All right, chat. So, y'all unanimously voted that you wanted better visuals, and especially for the history of, you wanted a read along. So I made it happen for you. Congratulations, you're welcome. You have no idea how much this took. Hang on, let me get our things right. Say that like I'm mad. I'm not really mad, but this took a lot of effort. I'm just saying. This is not going to be easy to do this every week. All I'm saying. But you're welcome, chat. You're welcome. Everyone is going to get exactly what they asked for. Welcome to the new setup. Why does my camera look odd now? Does my camera look suddenly like dark? Or is that just me? See, that feels like it's like too bright now, right? Or is that better? No, I guess that looks better. Better to be brightened up than not. All right. So, is this what you guys like? Is this what you want, chat? I could probably cut our cameras a little bit more. I don't know. You guys will have to let us know as we move forward what y'all like about this. But I could shrink our cameras so like where, because I'm only taking up, there. I'm only taking up to here, right? So I could cut my camera here, or I could at least cut it to like, wherever this thing is, like right here. Like I could cut my camera here. And same thing with Kage's. Like we could save ourselves this much if we really wanted to. It just depends on, like we don't need that much of his right side. So we could do that if y'all were interested. For something like right side. Because if I did the right side, like, so yeah, we could do something like that, y'all. Is that better? Let us know in chat. I'm gonna do this for both sides, but let me know. Is this looking better at all?
I think the cut looks good. All right, bet. I like your cut, G.
Oh, I see. So I'm 3 and 3. So let me do it to yours. Now my camera looks hella bright. Is that just me? Like now suddenly my camera,
It does look a lot brighter. Did it not? Did it?
it's like it was auto changed. There we go. Again though, yours seems like also interestingly bright now.
Right? I was gonna say
Or, I mean,
dark.
Dark. I feel like that's way too much. That's about right.
Oh, I'm getting the delayed versions.
There, is that better?
Hey, I was born in the darkness. All right. I don't know what you're talking about, soul.
All right, does that look better, everybody? Like,
I do think that looks clean.
I think it might just be any kind of auto sensing for like color imbalance.
Oh, is that?
That's the only thing I can think of is every time I mess with it with the filters, is it readjusts the balance.
Got you. So it might be like if I get up and come back or something.
Yeah, I don't know. But so does that look good? Are we going with this for the new setup? Is everybody cool with that? And chat, you know, should I make chat expanded to touch both of us, or is it cool having the gap? What do y'all think? Like, should chat come and all the way touch like the sides like it did, or should chat kind of have that like gap between you and me?
I honestly don't mind it the way it is.
Oh, I do have to change something though, because there is something that I do have to change. Is I will have to change this to the bottom now because chat's there. So history will stay at the bottom there.
Got you. Okay, that's not bad.
I don't know if it'll be able to stay there the
I don't
entire
mind that.
time though, because depending on that, I might have to shrink it down. But
I
so far, I
mean-
think everything looks good. I think this looks good for the start.
Mm-hmm. I love the hourglass.
Is that still visible for everybody? It's hard for me to see, but is that like actually visible?
It's small, but it's visible.
Okay. I mean, if you know, it's not going to be like you're not going to see the title from, you know, the thumbnail, but I'm just saying, like, if it's on the
Sure.
screen, you can see that it says history of an action economy, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay. Cool. All right. So let's do a quick YouTube intro and then we'll get started.
Get it.
Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the Misfit Gamers. No, actually, do we like Misfit Gamer Studios production, or just to the Misfit Gamer Studios? Like, I guess this isn't really a Misfit Gamer Studios production though, because that's normally for like the community streams and the more specialty stuff, like non D&D discussions. This is still D&D discussions.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say so.
Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the Misfit Gamer Studios. Wow. I'm so used to doing the original one, it's hard to like not do.
It's hard to
just
switch back and forth. I feel you. I feel you.
All right, here we go. Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the Misfit Gamer Studios. I am your host, Vortex. That gentleman over there is your host, Kage, and this is D&D Discussions. On today's episode, we are going through the history of Action Economy, all the way from 1st edition to 5th edition, what you were able to do during combat, what it was called, and when you were able to do it. Join us as we take this journey throughout history and see what D&D did to Action Economy.
Very cool.
Okay.
I love
it
it.
in the end.
That was
Kinda-
good.
Kind of clean. Kind of clean.
See?
All
Very
right,
clean.
All right. So, got some new stuff here for everybody. Everyone voted for this, so I scrambled this together before you came here. After I got off work and right before you came over, so I had like a 2-hour window
Nice.
to
Very
put
nice.
this all together. So bear with me.
Dude, the flow's been getting pretty good. See, that's what
I
I'm saying.
hope
The
so.
more you do it, the more it rolls. I'm here for it. I'm
Well,
here for
let's
it.
see how chat happens. What's going on, Cart? Nice to see ya.
What up?
Welcome to the new setup. We just did our intro for YouTube, and we are about to begin. So
Welcome, Cart.
this is going to be the new setup, and I hope everybody likes the new visuals for the read
Yeah.
along. You're not going to be reading along with me, but I do have visuals for y'all to keep track as I read.
Okay. Very nice. I like it.
So today we are doing the history of Action Economy through all of the editions, and of course we are going to start with OD&D, the original D&D 1974.
Like you do. Love it.
Boom. Here we go. So, what was Action Economy back in the day? Because Action Economy, as we know it, main actions, bonus actions, spells.
Sure.
That's what we know them as today. But oh boy, has it not been that way forever. It has changed so much. This is one of those aspects that has changed almost every single edition, trying to refine it to a.
I'm very curious because I feel like this type of action economy is, I would say it's close to the bones of an RPG. Because if you think about what you're doing in 5th edition versus what you're doing in like Pathfinder or what do you call it? What's the one that you wanted to try?
Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, Call of Cthulhu. Like I feel like the mechanics boil down to like what you roll, what you have to hit, all that stuff, like what your action economy is. Like,
But action economy is, again, so much more important because it encompasses so much, right?
100%.
So let's begin with original D&D, the round structure and the flow of time. How did this work? Well, combat rounds in OD&D were considered 1 minute of abstract time. So remember, in first edition, or in OD&D, not even first edition, right? So this isn't even AD&D as we know it. This is just Dungeons and Dragons.
Got you.
Everything in this particular rule set was very abstract. A lot was meant on the DM. A lot of this was influenced by Chainmail, the previous war game that they were developing.
A round was an entire minute.
Combat rounds were considered 1 minute of abstract time, simulating multiple exchanges. But you also have to understand that rounds didn't happen the way you think they did. So while a combat round was 1 minute, a turn in OD&D was equivalent to 10 minutes. Now, this wasn't combat related though. This is where we have to get our terms, because back in OD&D, a turn was more consistent with 10 minutes of doing something, such as exploring a dungeon.
Okay.
So if you were to say, I'm going to take this action to explore this dungeon, and we're going to do some
10
things,
minutes exploring
10 minutes worth of that would take a turn.
Gotcha.
So whatever would take you a turn's worth, if you wanted to search for a trap.
So would you say turns are more of an out of combat terminology?
Correct, yes. But I wanted to clarify that now, is while a combat round is a minute, a turn was
Combat
considered
round is
10
a
minutes,
minute.
but it was different
Interesting.
than in combat. This was just more of how the passage of time was compartmentalized. So when you wanted to do something and the DM would say it will take 2 turns to do, in game that was equivalent of 20 minutes, but it would take you 2 turns. So everybody could plan their actions accordingly. If you were dungeon delving, if you were exploring, traveling, that would allow everyone to compartmentalize what they were doing.
Got you.
Now remember, this was still highly influenced by the wargame aspect, right? The OD or before D&D with Chainmail and previous TTRPGs, most of those were wargame based, right? So everything was compartmentalized on top-down views. So if you were going to do something that took 2 turns, and this person was going to do something that took 3 turns, and that person was going to do something that took 1 turn, you knew when everything was going to take place, how long, or at what sections and in what order they would take place if they all started at the same time.
Okay.
Or started at different times.
Okay.
So that was really where that influence came from. Now, initiative in combat in OD&D was a little bit different than you might be familiar with, because addition was handled as a group.
Okay.
Enemies versus the party. That was it.
Okay.
1 roll. It was a D6. Higher wins.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like that. Like a little bit.
I mean, it takes away a lot of the nuance of what everyone can do.
Yes.
But here's the other thing too. This wasn't just a simple initiative of who goes first. In OD&D, the initiative also counted as who won the round. So, winning the initiative both meant that you resolved all your attacks and movement first. So the idea is that, again, we'll get into this in just a second, but combat didn't happen again as a turn-based system. This was a group-based system modeled after war games. So if both sides happen to act simultaneously, let's say both sides acted 3, it was completely up to the DM to decide exactly how everything was going to fall out. So it was their level of narration and creativity to decide, based on what you said and based on what the enemies are going to do, how does that play out cinematically and for the betterment? And we'll get into that. There was no formal turn order. There was no formal turn order. So again, this was your side, the party, versus my side, the enemies you're fighting. 1 roll to decide who's going to topple it, and then the rest was handled by me. Not so much in a turn order, but it wasn't, or an initiative tracker, like you went, then they went, then you went, then they went. It was one side's going to get to do their thing, and it was all supposed to be fluid in the narration of the DM. So
now I don't know if this is asking out of order, but if both sides were to say what they wanted to do, and then it's up to the DM to decide like how it plays out, but one side wins the round, does that mean the other side does not Their actions don't go off?
No. So one side that wins the initiative round, all of you go off at once. So
Sure.
if it's a party of 6 and you all said that you were going to do something and you win the initiative, all of what you are going to do is going to happen.
Right.
Then if there's anything left, the other enemy gets to act.
Got you.
It's when you do simultaneously, when you both roll the same and you go simultaneously. That's when it's going to be the DM's decision on how to stack.
Oh, so like if they both rolled 15s for initiative,
or in this case a 3, yeah, because it's a D6. So if you both rolled a 3 on a D6, it's the DM's decision to go, okay, you're going to take time because you're doing a spell. You said you rushed in. This enemy said they rushed in. So as you two clash, you're going to fire your arrow. This guy's going to duck and roll. That guy's going to get hit. You two are going to do this. It's literally a complete narrative. And what's funny is this is the same style that I have been talking about in recent streams about readjusting my combat style to everyone says what they do, makes their rolls ahead of time. And then I narrate how it unfolds instead of taking everybody's time with this back and forth, letting it be more of a decide what you're going to do. And instead of being based off of the nitty gritty, be based off of what everyone's going to do collectively.
Yeah.
Instead of he shot his arrow and killed him, and then he shot hit, and then he killed him with his sword. Well, then I'm going to go obviously for him. But that's not how you would all reacted.
Yeah.
You all would have chosen a target, and if you all happen to go for the same target again, just because he hit him with an arrow and killed him does not mean you would have seen him drop.
Yeah.
If you were rushing him, you would have gotten there 2 seconds or a second right after the arrow hit him. You still would be in the middle of swinging your sword. You wouldn't suddenly be like, oh, that arrow's definitely killing him. I'm going to go hit the guy 10 feet away. Like, that's the thing that this kind of accomplishes. But it does take away the nuance.
I do like this. My only problem would be, like, I know how I would run it if I were a DM, but I feel like it would be hard as a player. And again, this goes back to what I've talked about before. Like, the biggest part of this game for me is everyone collectively maintaining their player and DM immersion in the game. And so I feel like the only problem is without relatively clear expectations about what you think is going to happen in a particular situation, it makes it feel, you know how we were talking in one of the last either reviews that we were doing about something that feels bad? It feels like it might feel bad in certain situations if there's no opportunity for that player to be like, hey, can I posit to you another potentially plausible way that this could play out that might...
That, I see what you're saying, but that only applies when you look at D&D from its modern perspective. Back then, you weren't your character at that level. The idea of I'm not seeing my character fulfilled didn't exist in that way.
For sure.
Me describing the combat was much more the expectation.
So
much less in, like, it was much less at your concern to be like, that's not what I think it would happen.
Sure.
It was much more about, I chose a barbarian. I know my DM's going to make me do the barbarian thing.
I totally get that.
So I agree with you. It's just
I'll say a lot of the times when I look at these history ofs that we do, like as we're going through the editions, one of the biggest things I'm doing, because genuinely it's the first time I'm hearing about so much of this stuff, is the way that we find like all those little bits of like homebrew that's around that's like, oh, this is cool. Like even stuff from 5th edition that you've brought into your 2nd edition game, like taking pieces of these other editions and coalescing it into a game that feels good for you to play, like which is what High Point is. Like that's what I'm doing with all of these older editions. So like as I'm looking at this, I'm like, I kind of like how that sounds and feels, and I would love to try out running a combat like that just with a group of my players and be like, hey, let's try this out and see how you feel about it and see how it feels to actually play it. And because
a good way to do this is, if you don't want to completely change the mechanics or do a time travel and go back in time and go back to 1st edition, just run a tournament and just say that the rules operate differently. And out of game, that represents like this.
Okay.
So you could just say you're saying it's everyone's regular character. You don't have to relearn anything, but for the sake of this session, you're in a tournament. And because of the rules of the tournament, this is how it's going to look gameplay wise.
In this example that you're talking about here, would the characters, like you said, when the DM is explaining everything that happens, each character says what they're trying to do. So like if the wizard says they want to cast Fireball, they can cast fireball.
They're
that
going to
turn.
cast fireball.
And then if the barbarian says, I want to cleave, and
he's going to do that. Like, and that's the whole point about how that originally happened is the initiative roll was handled by the group D6 roll, and it was higher roll wins. But the whole point was the winning side of the initiative would get all of their actions pulled off first, then the opposing team. If it were a tie, they would both go simultaneous, and it's just up to the DM. But that's where it left vague, is how, when was all more specific to the cinematics. Remember, this was way back when it was the story over the mechanics. So as long as everybody was at the right stage, it made more sense on simultaneous, unless there was mistakes being made, unless it was going that way.
Now, out of curiosity, when this contested roll happens, this initiative roll happens, is that the entire round minute?
Yes, that is the one combat round. That's why it's a minute long. So the minute long is the simulation time for everything. That's why it's considered a 1 minute combat round. Is everything the team said they were going to do, everything the party said or the enemies were going to do, all of that consists in the 1 minute that the DM narrates, and then it's the next round.
Would OD&D handle one-on-one combat differently?
Nope. Same thing.
So one turn is a minute, the other turn is a minute.
Yeah. It's an abstract concept of time. It wasn't, nothing was specific to points.
For sure.
It was just the idea that of all the posturing, the feigning, the moving, at some point over the course of a minute, whatever you wanted to happen would happen. And that's why the DM was there to judge how to talk about it.
The reason why I ask is because I feel like there would be some of these spells that would potentially take more than one turn, especially in older
we
editions.
will get into that because we haven't gotten very far yet. You allowed me to. I have so much more to cover in this. But yes, that is something that got fixed later, but was a problem.
Okay.
Is because that, again, it all came down to how the DM felt the narration fit best. And you basically just trusted the DM to give you a good story and not worry about the nitty gritty. No, again, this was back in the day where while those questions were being answered, it wasn't that every player was getting up in arms about it like you would see nowadays, where everyone has their own opinion. It was more of a, do you and your DM like the decision you're going to make? Because that's the decision that's going to keep being made in this campaign. Got you. And that's why I'm very open to these older school ways of playing, because it's very much an agreement between the players and the DM and not so much a formality of what book are you reading.
Yes, 100%.
So again, in this case, just to kind of reiterate as well, because there was no formal turn order or initiative tracker, combat was basically fluid, favoring DM's judgment. All players acted during an initiative. So everyone on either side acted all at once, or again, narrated by the DM together. So how a combat round actually unfolds. Let's do a step-by-step guide on how to actually unfold combat. So, and this is how it's going to look out for each edition as well. So step one was determine surprise. So in OD&D, the first thing you needed to do was determine if anyone was going to be surprised. Both sides would roll a d6. A roll of a 1 or 2 equaled a surprise round. Basically, kind of an extra round for people who are surprised, can't do anything. Very, very blatant rules. It's basically just a free round. Second, you needed to declare your spells. Casters must declare their intent before initiative is thrown. So in this particular case, you roll surprise, see if anyone's surprised. Casters declare their what spells they're doing, and then basically everybody else. The main concept was you were probably going to attack. Like anybody else, you're just going to use your attack action. So unless you wanted to specifically do something else, it was assumed you're going to
specify a target.
Yeah, you specify your target and attack, but spellcasters had to specify what they were about to do.
Gotcha.
Then at stage 3, you rolled the initiative. This is that group-based D6. Both sides are going to roll. Winner takes. Then you resolve all your actions. The winning side acts fully first. This is in this order: melee attacks, movement, rarely split with actions, however. So back in OD&D, the concept of movement and action weren't really two separate things. It was you would move to cover distance and attack in that same moment. But the idea of you moving, attacking, moving, or moving to get advantage and then attack wasn't really part of your play vernacular, because again, it was more about the DM saying, okay, you want to attack them? I have to craft where I put them. So if you need to move 10 feet, I'm going to move you 10 feet to make your attack. your movement wasn't necessary for your control. It was
Gotcha.
only necessary to get your what you needed to accomplish off.
If I say something like, I want to go behind cover and fire an arrow, could I say something like that? Or would it be
wasn't
just like...
as used in OD&D because the concept of cover wasn't...
Okay.
Your archer would not have to move in order to fire. In fact, if anything, your archer might be too close, and the DM would then say you take a few steps back.
Okay.
But in that particular case, again, it wasn't specific.
So-
it wasn't as specific to every... Because again, this was all theater of the mind, so it wasn't specific to where you were in the grid. It was more of a... How far away am I close enough, and how close to how far
That's
can I
what you
move?
meant when you said earlier. It feels like you're telling your DM what target you want to hit, and he's going to be like, okay, well, your archer's going to act like an archer. So if an archer needs to climb up a tree to go hit this person, he's going to go climb up this tree. But if he needs to go
Exactly.
hide in a bush, then he's going to hide in a bush.
And this is all on the
You know.
narrative. So if it makes sense to do that and the DM is creative enough, they will do that. If they
Right.
aren't, they'll be basic about it. But again,
Sure.
it was, I mean, this is
That's
back when
the
90% of the
agreement that-
roles were made by the DM. You said, I want to be stealthy. And all you heard from this DM was you're acting stealthy. They would, meanwhile, did a roll and would never tell you. Like, this is back, like, most modern players don't get this concept that you never had that much control. You
So-
only had the control of intent. Like, people don't get plain D&D with only control of intent and no other aspects. I don't know if we need to get, but
Yeah.
it's weird. It's weird that no one really gets that.
It's interesting. There was this episode of Community, and they were playing D&D, and the whole game, the DM was asking the players what they wanted to do, and then he would roll his D20 to see what happened, to see what you got on the thing that you were
Yes.
trying to do. It was like the DM was the only person that had a dice. Everybody else
the
was
original
just
way
like-
to do it. That was the
I was
official
wondering,
way-
like, just now, I wonder what edition they're playing. Like,
yeah,
I
that
wonder,
was
like,
probably
what
first
rules
or second, because it wasn't until
So
like
wild.
third or 3.5 that they started encouraging players. But yeah, it's insane. Like, dice goblins weren't a thing. The DMs were, but it wasn't a thing. Like, it's just
Yep.
crazy.
So
So yeah,
wild.
so you declared round 3 narrative, resolving actions on step 4. So melee attacks, movement, but again, movement was only coupled with your attacks. Then spell resolution, as long as you weren't interrupted. Now, interruptions were again typically only handled if the opposing team won. So if you were a spellcaster and you lost initiative against the opposing team, your spell would not go off because they get all their attacks first, and as long as you were a target, you would essentially
Get interrupted?
Yes, and you would get interrupted, and your spell just would not go off. So sucks to suck on being a mage back in the day. Trust me, mages. Again, the concept of a glass cannon is, it's a common phrase, but rarely do people understand what that really means. It sucked. Like, you had to be very clever and very prepared as a mage back then, and you had to just be like, again, clever in the sense that you had to know when you should cast spells. If the enemy's right up on your ass, you did not bother, because if you do not win the initiative roll, you're wasting spells. So and the spell is lost when you are interrupted in OD&D.
Sure. No, I 100%. So this is like, if they even target you, if they attack you, if you are hit, whatever the case may be, your spell dies.
Yes, because they won the initiative. Now, if it's a simultaneous one, that's completely up to your DM. More often than not, they wouldn't, unless, again, they're right up on you. There's a surprise round. Like, if there's reason for the narrative to make sense, the DM would take advantage of it. But
Right.
more often than not, simultaneous, this spell would go off because it looks better that way.
Yeah.
You know, as he jumps on you, your fireball goes off in his
Yeah.
face. Way more narrative than, sucks to suck. But if you lost initiative, that's it. You basically knew if you took damage, your spell's gone. You only were lucky if you did not get targeted and take damage.
Interesting. Okay. Bet.
So
I'm here for it.
Step 5 was damage resolution. So you resolved via the D20 attack rolls and weapon damages. Typically D6s were universally used across the board.
For weapon damage?
Yeah. So
Gotcha.
once everything resolved, you did the D20 for the attack rolls. So again, if the enemy team won initiative, they would just roll D20s to see if they would hit. And then if they did, they would roll their D6 for damage. And if you got damaged, then you would lose your spell. And then everybody else would get to do their attack because their attacks aren't undone by damage.
Shit.
Unless they went down. And then repeat for the next round. So that was combat, just over and over and over. Is you say what you're going to do, roll a d6, whoever wins gets to do all of their actions first, otherwise the DM has to narrate it. It's melee / movement, then spell resolution, then damage. It's clean.
I kind of want to try it.
Like I said, it's very reminiscent of any
play
kind of
with it.
war of the wargaming mentality. So damage attacks. Early on D&D used a d6 universally across the board, so it doesn't matter what weapon you're using, it's a d6 of damage.
Okay.
I'm not a fan of that, but I totally understand the ideology behind it. It makes one of the more balanced combat systems.
Sure, I get that.
And again, glass cannon becomes way more understandable
Yes.
when you realize that the
Yes.
wizard is the only one doing more than d6. So when people like complain, it's like you don't realize the reason why wizards were so revered is in one spell you could do your entire team's worth of damage over the course of 2 rounds in one spell. If you got that spell off, mind-blowing. That's what people don't realize.
No wonder people freaked out over Fireball.
Exactly. Like people don't get
Like,
when
seriously.
everybody did a mere d6, no matter what you were, the rogue to a fighter to a cleric, d6 is all around, and then here comes the mage just being like, boom, 10d6. Like,
So
I don't think it was 10d6, but you know what I mean? Like, it's absolute maddening when people don't realize like why glass cannon was such a good
it
nickname.
really. So I keep getting these freaking videos where you see like a movie scene, and then over top of one person is like rogue or bard, and over top of somebody else is like barbarian or something. And so it was this, what fighters say when they get to 5th level, and they're like, hey, I'm really excited, I got extra attack. And then it shows this video of this guy going into his trunk, and he's the wizard, and he's pulling out a freaking bazooka.
Yep.
And he's like, access to 3rd level spells. And then this little tiny goblin with a pea shooter shooting at him up from the top of the roof, and he just pulls, and the whole building comes. It's ridiculous.
Love it. That's exactly
I'm like,
exactly it.
That's lightweight what it feels like. It's like, I got a freaking nuke in my pocket now, dude.
But I will say, in small little note here, I was able to find that in Greyhawk Supplemental in 1975, they did introduce variable weapon damage. So even that early, they were thinking that weapons should be doing, maybe a Warhammer should do something different than, a rogue's little, pointy dagger.
A little too thick.
Just saying. So
Yeah.
they did start thinking about it as early as that. Action types and terminology. So at this point, we did not have anything considered standard action. We did not have bonus action. We did not have free action. You just had attack or spell. Movement really wasn't, again, an action. It was a thing that you did if you needed, or positioning, right? But the concept of an action was just purely, are you attacking or casting a spell? The idea behind combat was very, there was no concept of laying out because everyone was expected to know what to do. In fact, it was even assumed that pretty much all of the playing characters were going to do something meaningful. You were going to move an attack or cast a spell. Like, the ideology behind you not doing anything didn't really exist. It was just, are you attacking, or do you just have to move to get closer? Or do you have to cast a spell? Like, that's it. It's just, what are you doing in combat? There wasn't this idea of like tactics, right?
Do they have any concept of reactions or preparing something in case something specific happens?
We'll get into that here in just a second, actually.
Okay.
So the last type of action type and terminology is that we did not have any rules specifically for drinking potions, drawing weapons, or all of that was basically adjudicated from the DM. That was all in the moment too. It was all ad hoc. So in one gaming session, you wanted to drink a potion mid-combat, maybe he lets you swap it out for an attack and say, yeah, you can do that instead. But maybe in a different one, because of the situation, he narrates it that because you have to clear so much distance to the enemy, while you're running, you're able to pop it and still get your attack off at the end. Because there's no formal economy here, right?
Sure.
Because it's all narration based, that's what was expected. If you're hand to hand, like clenched and swords, like
it's a minute.
clashing together.
It's a minute.
Yeah,
That's fair.
So I can see that if your swords are clashing together and you're a sword and shield guy, there's no way I'm going to let you down a potion right now.
Sure.
Without popping or getting away, or without busting out or
doing something
without removing your action.
Yeah.
But again, if you tell me, hey, I need to cover my, it's going to take me the entire time. They're 30 feet away. Even if I sprint, I'll barely get there in enough time to attack. Can I pull out the potion from my pocket real quick and, chug it while I'm running? A DM could easily allow that because, again, you're not ruining action economy. It's all about how does that narrative work. If your hands are free and you're just running, why can't you just do that while you're running, toss it to the side, and then still get a hit? And that's, again, why I have my modifications to high point, because I don't necessarily like the full-on structure of not being able to narrate certain moments of things, which is why I know you were interested in my my action economy for 5th edition when you were able to do multiple attacks, but trade those for different actions. This is kind of where it started to spawn from. What's really funny is I know you're not necessarily a huge fan. I know that mine's kind of confusing to you, but my original DMs would have driven you absolutely insane, because with their action economy, with mine, it's if you're certain proficient with a weapon, I allow certain actions of your attack actions to be swapped out.
Sure.
Because again, I look at it from kind of similar to this, right? You wanted a better explanation. How this treats that 1 minute as it's a narrative minute. It's an abstract concept of a lot of things are happening. That's how I treat the 6 seconds of your actions. And the movement, the feigning, you're not explaining that you're feigning. We don't necessarily talk about like all the little tiny little things, right?
Sure.
But I like the abstract idea that the better you are with the weapon, the more you're able to hold your bubble with that weapon. And the better you are with it, the more attacks you could pull off is not so much a representation of individual actions, it's a representation of the proficiency of the weapon. And while you could have pulled off 2, 3, 4 attacks this round, maybe you spent the equivalent energy of 2 of those to do 2 attacks and feign off any opportunity attack while you popped a potion.
It's like treading water for 2 beats instead of stroking for 2 beats.
Exactly. So for me, my swap out is more of, yes, the more proficient you are with a certain weapon, and let's say you have multiple attacks per round, you are able to swap those particular attacks for other actions, but not when you use a different weapon that you're not as proficient with. Why? Because the mentality is you have to put more focus on protecting your bubble. And if you're not proficient with that weapon, you have less tools in your toolbox to defend yourself. That's why I do it. But again, it's only specific to the weapon, and it's only specific to kind of like an attack swap out, right? That's because I look at it more as it's what you're doing in your whole 6 seconds, not necessarily an 1-for-1 action. But you would probably be driven insane by my DMs, because my DMs was pretty much unlimitedly stackable. Like, it got down to, you had a weapon. Let's say I had a bow and arrow. And let's say I had 2 attacks per round with my bow and arrow.
Sure.
So I can go. But guess what? It was a free action to drop a weapon. So let's say I dropped that weapon. So I went 1, 2, drop. Now guess what I have? 2 free open hands. Guess what each free hand gets to do? A free action. Now drawing a weapon is a free action. But you know this about all my rogues. They all have the ability to pull out daggers from the little slide, right?
Sure.
Do you want to know why I invented that? Because that didn't take my arm's free action. So if I shot 2 arrows with my bow and dropped my bow and then pulled out 2 daggers with that mechanism, still had technically 2, I saved my 2 actions with my hands. So I could attack with those daggers. Let's say I had 3 attacks with my daggers. Let's say I was that proficient because I was with my rogue. I can get 2 attacks with this hand, 2 attacks with this hand because I was ambidextrous, I had training in it. So I was able to get my 2 attacks. Now I had 1 attack left each with my daggers. I could throw them. Now I had 2 empty hands, still with those actions that I didn't use. Each of those hands could now draw a new weapon. And each of those weapons had their own action proficiency. So I could draw 2 more daggers, each with 3 attacks. It was fucking stupid, but that's how my DM allowed it. The more you could stack your actions, so you could literally get 10 attacks off simply by drawing and dropping weapons. Like, it was dumb. I don't allow that much.
Sure.
But can you, like...
But
we abused the fuck out. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. We abused the motherfucking shit out of it.
It is a great mechanic to play with. How realistic do I find that it is?
His,
not the most.
Not at all. His was not at all.
But I totally get.
But granted, this was when you were like level 18 and near like, godhood. Like, this was really representative of like,
I'm a badass.
Yeah, and the enemies were doing shit too.
Yeah.
But I found a happy medium.
Sure.
The happy medium between this, where it's much more of a, I treat every combat not so much as a strict step-by-step, action-by-action, but as I still look at it as all one fluid motion. While you're going before that character, in my mind, I'm slow-mowing the entire battle because you're moving together.
Yeah.
You may have attacked first, but your attack came in where he blocked and then he attacked. It's all one thing. So when people have more proficiency, I'm okay with them pulling things off. Like, while I'm running, can I do this? Right? That's where I found my middle ground of learning how they used to let the DM just kind of make sense of it versus how we codified every single action.
Yeah.
I wanted to find something that made a better balance, because I do think you should be able to be that, I don't want to say superhero. It's like that anime moment
I
where
feel like
you just do things and you just see things happen in anime that you just would not happen in the real world.
Yes.
Like, even if it's one of those things where a bonus action, I want to pop a heal potion and I don't have my bonus action. So like I said, you can not attack. And that might be like, why would an attack equate to a potion? Well, you could either assume, like I do, that it's an equivalency of energy and you're feigning off an opportunity to pop it, or go one extra mile, like other DMs could go one extra mile and treat it like an anime. Say that instead of attacking the enemy, you had 3 attacks and you wanted to use one to pop a heal potion. Let's say you attacked once and attacked twice, but when you attacked twice, you sliced and you brought your hilt close to your chest and you popped out, the vial that was on your chest belt.
Yeah.
And it popped up in the air, and as you sliced him, you reached up and it dropped in your mouth, and then you like bit through the cork and popped it.
Right.
And it spit it out, and you're like, why can't you narrate that as a replacement for an
I genuinely
attack?
feel like this whole mentality, this whole idea, like, enables us to have way more like movie theater anime-esque like moments. Like, you can actually narrate all these like cool things, like your Neo scenes, your all of that, like, way better and way cooler when it's not one moment at a time. Right?
Exactly.
Like all of this stuff happening at the same time and you like moving through it. I do know like why they've gone that way, because the players want to feel in control of how cool they look. They want to be like, I rolled a 20. They want to be like, I rolled this much damage. They want to be like, and none of that happens when you're doing it like this. It's just somebody,
unless you're the DM that in good moments are like, hey, how does that look for you? Like, narratively speaking, if you're
Sure.
hey, you guys are about to just take it. What does that arrow look like? How do you topple him? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you try to do your best. And again, back then, players weren't expected to narrate. It was really a sit down with a storyteller, and you just feed them the prompts, and the storyteller does the rest. It's like playing ad libs. You gave it the prompts, and they would just tell you how the story filled out.
Yeah.
And that's what was expected. But I do agree. Nowadays, I'd be more of a back and forth. I'd tell the general story, but let people add in their own little like pieces to it. We have a this or that real quick. No context. Beast or plague?
Beast or plague?
I'm gonna go beast. Beast. Yep. Beast.
You know what? I'm going beast too.
All right. So, no rules for the drinking potions, drawing weapons, all adjudicated by the DM on an ad hoc basis. So again, the way that I'm looking at that is, regardless if you want it to be a cinematic AI scene or a cinematic anime scene,
Right.
where you burn the attack and what you're actually doing is doing some more of the physical action that gets the thing accomplished, right? You bump the potion out of your pocket and drink it, or you break it or something like that, versus thank you, versus where I interpret it as just more of your prowess with the weapon allows you more mobility in that 6-second movement and allows you to just protect yourself at the cost of an action to essentially protect yourself from what would be an opening shot.
Right.
Because again, if you're in the middle of sword play and you pop a thing like this,
You're theoretically
you're
leaving
taking your
yourself
eyes off them.
Yeah.
You're doing this. You're not at position. But if you're really proficient, think about like those tropes about like the really great swordsmen who are like da 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 drink 1606.
Yeah.
They're not even looking and they're just doing this. and then they go back and then they go back crazy. That's how I interpret what you're doing when you take an action or when you remove one of your attacks and do something else with it. It's that moment where you're just like, this is fun. As in you're just showing off, as in I don't have to fully engage with you. But I still don't necessarily agree that it's just a free thing you get to do. It has to cost something. It has to cost energy. It has to cost mental fortitude.
Right.
And that means that you're going to lose that opportunity to get that hit off.
Sure.
So again, not a 1-for-1 action to action. It's just a fluidity concept.
Yeah.
But again, hopefully that explains a little bit more about that conversation we had, because I know that it was a little bit difficult when I first said that you could take you could, instead of attack, use a different action. And I get it. When you're thinking of like a flurry of blows.
The idea that these things are done over a greater period of time makes a lot more sense when I'm thinking of like a 6-second period. Now, I will say in combat, 6 seconds feels like so much longer than it actually is. So like, I definitely get the idea that it like you're thinking that a lot of stuff is happening during this time, but it's
a lot of fluff. Like realistically, there's a lot of fluff. Watch real combat, even though it looks like there's a lot of punches. Like, I mean, imagine this. I've heard the argument too. Like if you watch boxing, they throw way more punches in 6 seconds than I do. But it's like, but how many get scored?
And
that's what you have to understand.
Are they throwing that many punches?
Or how often are they throwing that many punches? Or how often are 2 or 3 of those punches shortened? Like they're just block, there's your opening, right? Like it's not real punches. It's I'm testing your weak. Like people don't realize that a thrown attack in what you watch in real life doesn't equate to an attack in D&D. It's the concept of, again, when I say you're feigning, when you juke someone and they kind of hold up their shield, but no one actually makes contact, that's not an attack action.
Yeah.
That's what I'm imagining is just happening the entire combat. You two are dancing around each other. You act like you're going to go left and then you don't. Like you're just trying to keep them off their footing, right? So in boxing, like most of those hits, you realize you don't get scored on every single throw, every single punch you throw. You're scored on the things that land. And in my opinion, the things that pretty much land or you're scored on, or at least cause you fatigue, like, the throw that you missed, but definitely took a lot out of you to throw or opened you up. Those are the equivalent of the D&D actual attack actions. Because those are the things that actually could take you out of, again, your defensive maneuvers.
No, I do get that. Yeah, it's definitely different when, like, even like you were saying, when you're in a combat situation, like you are not throwing that many punches that often, like intended to connect, like, and even there are a lot of moments where there is downtime, even in like boxing matches or the UFC, like no one's throwing like,
I mean, in boxing they hug, you know what I mean?
Imagine a monk using flurry of blows back to back to back to back to back to back. Like that's you just like in freaking what's his name in Marvel Rivals. Oh
yeah, Shang-Chi or whatever.
Yes, just going
right. Or imagine just like again, boxers use the speed the
speed bags. Yeah.
You could sustain that, but you're not sustaining it in the ring. That's a practice. You
But
get sustain.
also,
So imagine that kind of flurry
none
of blows.
none of those are like punches meant to do that much damage.
Exactly.
Like you're just bouncing this bag.
And that's kind of how I'm looking at a lot of this. Is it comes down to how do you read it? And again, this is why I'm much more about the raw versus rye. Or I'm on the rye versus the raw, right? It's like people are looking at it and goes like, yeah, but this is what the action says, and this is how action economy works, and this is how combat works. It's like, but you're not looking at the intent. What is the intent of this combat, and how is it supposed to, unfold? So I agree with you. It's showing that back in the day, it was much more about the story, and I get it that they wanted to give it more to the players, but there's a lot of value here. There's a lot of value even in 5th edition to show you how your combat really should be worked in your head, not so much on paper.
For sure.
All right, so moving on, getting back to topic, combat counter handling. So there were things like surprise checks, there were, as we talked about, but there were also other ones, things like morale checks and pursuit rolls, like being chased or chasing. These things existed, but were very minimal and rarely referenced. So it was, again, more of that wartime combat concept of if someone wanted to flee combat, could you chase them down? So there were brief mentions of being able to do some pursuit mechanics. Morale checks were, again, a byproduct or a what's the term? A hand-me-down or a leftover from the wartime tactics, right? Where an entire army's morale would change their roles. So they kind of loosely said that you could have morales on certain combats, but it was just more of, hey, here's a thing you can use, but it wasn't leaned on or encouraged.
Was that more for the DM or for the players?
More for the DM.
Okay, that's what I thought, for like their creatures and stuff
Exactly.
like that.
Obviously, there was no initiative order. It was just it was the win-lose. Maps were optional, and measurement was often abstract. So again, a lot of theater of the mind. There were no real coded like graphs or maps or anything. I mean, maps were usually hand generated on graph paper, so it wasn't like there were spaces. It was more of you were only mapping it out to not get lost. Outside of that, combat was more of, am I close enough to hit them? And it kind of like what I do is much more of it's not as important to know specifically where you are on the map. It's more important to know where's the enemy, where are you in comparison to it, basically distance and what's in between you.
Right.
You know, specific, I do use maps on occasion if it makes more sense, or I'll draw it up. But a lot of the time, some combats are pretty straightforward and just deserve people doing their thing and letting them play out the combat in their head instead of worrying too much. It's kind of like, I almost kind of imagine sometimes where combat can be really, really important where you are. Like if it's in a bar or anything, I'm much more descriptive about where stuff is.
Sure.
If it's out in an open field, I so don't care about a map on a field. If an archer is within range, I'll tell them they're within range, and I'll let them know when they need to be worried about someone getting too close to them, right?
Sure.
It's not a big deal, in my opinion, to be specific on how far they are, unless they need to know a specific distance for an ability. But outside of that, when it comes down to like using terrain, obviously that's really important. Sometimes maps can be really helpful if you have anything that's interactable.
Mm-hmm.
But I treat it a lot like how video games used to, where you would be in one location and then you'd get into a combat and then the background would somewhat change, maybe something similar, but it's not where you were.
Sure.
And the fight was more focused on what you were doing with the fight, and then the background kind of faded back to where you were. That's kind of how I treat my theater of the mind. I don't care if I say we're in a field of plains and you're getting ambushed. I don't care if your field of plains are flat grass and wheat fields versus I'm imagining it's just tall, green grass with like some trees in the distance. That's superfluous, right? Unless you ask for a place to hide and I say there's tall grass, then you might go, oh, it's not wheat, it's tall grass.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, we both knew you were outside in a giant field somewhere, and we both knew you were attacking, these. Do I care whether if it mattered and I specifically said they have, black leather, robes that are all very specifically designed? That's one thing. If I just say there's a group of bandits, does it matter whether you saw them in brown leather or I saw them in red tanned leather? No.
Yeah.
Not unless that detail I needed you to have. And thus, that's why theater of the mind and this kind of like interplay was, I don't care so much about maps because I want you to have fun. And if it's easy for you to just imagine a battle, it doesn't matter all of those details unless those details are things that you're going to use.
I agree. And to be honest, I end up doing the same thing in my own games, because the only time I'll really actually break out a map, usually because I'm ill prepared and don't have something for them, the only time I'll do that is when they start asking enough questions where it would just be easier for me to show them.
Yeah.
Right? That's I'll just
totally understandable.
I'll just keep doing stuff. Theater of the mind is like, no, but what if he's I'm like, all right, let me just put you on the map and then you can tell me what you want to do based upon what you're seeing. So like I totally feel that. And
then also when it came to combat too, players really had to describe intent. Like I said, this game back in the day was way more about like actions of intent, not actions of mechanics. So it was really on to the players to describe intent clearly, because timing didn't really matter. So especially if it was simultaneous, the better description you had, the more the DM worked it in, right? So if you just went for a straight attack versus I'm gonna run and then I want to like slide and like, if you just gave them a cool thing to work with, or you're like, hey, I'm gonna, like there's like goblins and there's like a troll behind them. I'm a big brute. I can I just run and like go past the goblin and maybe the DM will say you jumped on him and leaped past him or something, right? that was the thing, is you had to describe the intent of what you were doing, right? Who are you attacking? Why are you attacking them? How are you attacking them?
Could you theoretically say, if I'm like a super nimble rogue or ranger or something like that, could I theoretically say I wanted to do something preposterous, like run atop the heads of these goblins?
I mean,
And-
that's the fun thing is, if it didn't break again, back then, there's no reason why it would have broke anything, because if your initiative won, you probably everyone went first, so thematically it probably looks cool. Right? It wasn't, even in simultaneous, maybe he let you go halfway and then one of them got you. Because they like snagged your leg or something.
Sure.
That was the fun of it. The fun was in the story.
But it was still possible for you.
Yes.
Because that's the biggest thing.
It's always been
for
possible.
me,
It's just
is
the
like,
DM's ability to be creative with
are
narrative.
you willing to make everything possible? Because that's genuinely what I believe D&D is all about, is like, is exploring anything being a possibility. So okay, I'm here for that.
So spellcasting integration, spell lost if interrupted was a major point of this. So again, the glass cannon concept of, if you chose to use a spell and you did not win initiative and you were attacked and took damage, you were not going to get your spell off, period. Again, damage before resolution. So if you got damaged before your spell went off, that was it. So again, if they got to resolve, if simultaneously there was no reason for your DM to give you the benefit, kind of sucked. There was no concentration mechanic back then. Spells were just one-offs. They just spelled, or they just lasted. There was no defining casting time beyond declaring before the round. So this was just straight.
Okay.
If you declared that spell going off, that spell was going to go off unless you took damage. Period. End of story. You chose the spell. That's it.
Was there theoretically any restrictions to spells? Like, were there certain spells that are specifically out of combat spells that you couldn't cast during combat?
There might have been, but not primarily, no. But not a lot. Most of this, like healing spells, but primarily this was all going to be combat-based for OD&D. And then casters could not move or take other actions while casting.
Could not move or take other actions while casting.
So
Okay,
if you
fair
were going to
enough.
cast a spell, like again,
It was going to take your whole minute.
if the archer wanted to attack and they were too close, you could justifiably move an attack.
Sure.
Casters could not. The moment you wanted to cast, that's why it was all about knowing when to cast a spell, because if you were not in position, you better use that round to move further away, burn that whole round, and then at the next round cast your spell. That was the one downside. And again, glass cannon. Think about how hard it is to move a cannon into position. You don't just, scurry it along. Glass cannon makes so much more sense.
That include doing things like using wands or...
Yeah.
So that would take your entire turn? Or
Yeah.
you couldn't move or do anything?
Because magic was all treated the same. Even if they had wands, usually it was
Because I
associated
kind of
with
like the
spells.
idea of casting a spell, meaning you have to stay there, but
again, wand spells and things like that didn't work the same way. It
Yeah,
wasn't
for
like
sure,
an
for sure.
activation word. So, but the idea is there. And again, that's where they improved on it, right? That's where we get these ideas of like, how do you take what we know and what they've tried before and find that perfect in between.
yeah.
All right. Ooh, and then I was able to find some like small little snippets. So from OD&D Volume 1 from Men and Magic. Magic must be spoken aloud and uninterrupted. So again, it's that idea that magic was very open, very boisterous. There was no sneaking it. If you were casting magic, everybody knew. It was grandiose and amazing.
It was like you were... I keep sending you these stupid TikToks of these random wizards casting stupid spells on each other. And it's just,
I love those ones.
like our
Long pinky toe. Yeah.
It's the dumbest spells, but it's kind of like that. Like you're like, why are we sitting here announcing the spells? Because that's what you have to do. Because that's a part of you casting the spell.
I always kind of like that mechanic. Like it's always been fun. So to end OD&D, we have a small example that I put together, like a structure of how that would work out, right? So the DM would ask each side to roll their D6, party rolls a 5, and goblins roll a 2, which means the players would win that initiative.
Awesome.
Wizard says that they declare sleep before this initiative roll was done. So technically what would have happened was the wizard would have declared sleep. Fighters would have declared move and melee. Then they would have rolled the initiative. Players roll a D5, goblins roll a 2. Therefore, everybody on
the
player side will initiate. So fighters will move in melee first and get all of their attack damages off, rolls to hit. Wizards complete their sleep spell, affecting 2D, H like goblins. And goblins won't be able to attack that round due to the initiative lost and spell effect combined. So at that point, they would have been able to do their action afterwards, but the spell now prevented them from being able to complete their action, so thus their entire turn is negated. And we repeat.
Okay.
So it's declare, roll, resolve, repeat.
I'm not totally mad at it. Like I would love to play around with this mechanic at some point in time. I'm gonna see. I have some extra time over the upcoming break, so I'm gonna see if I can't get together with some of my players and see if they'll let me experiment on them.
See, and again, Hoyleba, it depends on which edition you play and how you look at how magic is done. Because yes, there are some things that you can look at for magic. I mean, at least 5th edition has multiple types of magic. But yes, the wizard level of taking longer to prepare a spell than it is to cast one is really dependent upon the edition that you use and how long that all happens. But again, lacking in role play, I think really just depends upon the table that you're gaming at, because very mechanically played tables that are very raw oriented. Sure. Again, they're going to treat everything very strictly. What are you doing on this turn? Next person, take everything that you know already into account. What are you doing? Right? It's very one after the other, and spells can be very lacking in role play because if you're focusing just on the outcome, what did the spell do? Yeah, there's going to be no role play there. But if everyone's getting the opportunity to add to that narrative, and the DM is using these things to add to the narrative and not just as statements of fact, right? You cast Fireball. I think there's a lot of role play to be had with Wizards, especially in the earlier editions, because again, tacticalness, positioning was a lot more important back then than it was now, when you basically can kind of just be anywhere and cast a spell at any point.
Right.
So I think, again, it just really depends upon the player and DM dynamic there.
I agree.
All right. Well, now we can move on to 1st edition. Let me update the doodly-doos down here, and there we go. Sweet. All right. I do kind of like that, having these update. I don't know if you guys are liking the read along stuff down here, but it's not bad. I think it's nice little highlights from what we're talking about.
I do like it.
All right, so now moving on to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 1st edition from 1977. So round structure and flow of time. Combat rounds were still 1 minute.
Okay.
Each round, however, was now broken into 10 segments of 6 seconds each.
So round is a minute and a segment is 6 seconds?
Correct.
And there are 10 segments.
10 segments per round. This is the area that I'm most familiar with, that I prefer. This is the level of granularity that I liked in terms of it was a better way for DMs to decide when things happened, in my opinion. I liked it as it developed, not to say this version of it, but I do appreciate segments. In my opinion, segments were like where it's at. So each round had 10 segments. Each combat round was 1 minute. Initiative is rolled per side as a group with a D6, or per individual at the DM's discretion. So the DMG basically gave the DM options on whether or not you treat both sides as one, or if everybody gets to individualize their initiative.
Okay.
Casting time and weapon speeds were introduced, thus measured in segments, determining when in a round specific actions would resolve. So now it's no longer on the DM to adjudicate on that ad hoc basis specifically where each little thing would happen. It is now more specific to the design of the weapon or the spell. It will tell you when you get to do it. So in those 10 segments, you would roll a d6, and so your actions for that round, your turn for that round, would start on one of the first 6 segments of one of the first 36 seconds
Sure.
of the minute. And then whatever you were using may add time to that, may add segments. So maybe you go off in segment 3, but your weapon or spell has 2 segments of time. So your effect won't go off until segment 5. Now, if you're attacking another spellcaster and their segment is number 6, you're going to hit them before their spell goes off. thus having a chance to say interrupt them. Whereas if theirs goes off at 4, yours doesn't go off till 5, even though you started at 3. You know what I mean? Theirs would go off first, maybe counteracting yours. So that's where this kind of gave that granularity of timing matter.
Was there allowances to, if I wanted to make sure my spell goes off after somebody in my party, could I like wait until theirs goes? Like I
basically
declared,
ready in action,
kind of.
I think we do get into that. I don't remember. I don't think readied actions were introduced into that.
Got you. Not until 2nd edition.
Yeah, as far as I'm seeing here. So no readied actions just yet.
Okay.
But again, this was the very first introduction to segments, so
Right,
we
right.
probably didn't realize that was going to be a problem.
That's fair enough. That's very fair enough.
All right, so action types and terminology. Still no formalized action types. So it wasn't action, bonus
Sure.
action, none of that just yet. It was still what you were doing.
Just what are you trying to do?
So instead, without action types, timing was managed through weapon speed factors and casting time in segments.
Sure.
And of course, the lower the speed factor, the quicker your weapon would react.
Was the movement used the same way as it was in OD&D? Like you just
Yeah.
moved according to whether you needed to or not?
Yeah. Other than getting into specific positioning, it was basically on an as needed basis. It wasn't as much of a controllable feature. It wasn't as intended to be a nitty gritty feature that needed to be controlled. And then each segment resolved actions in order of initiative plus their modifier. So you had some modifiers, but basically initiative now happened in that order. So still the concept of collectively everything happens all at once and everyone rolls for it. But now there's just a more structured order of now we all know from the get-go who's going to, what actions are going to go off, instead of it just being up to the DM to just figure it out right then and there. So a little bit easier for the DM. Also a little bit more, everybody kind of gets to have their hand in it.
Okay.
And everybody gets to, again, based on
Interesting question, because now that I'm thinking about it, in the OD&D version, would it have been possible for there to be 3 groups of enemies? Or like 2 groups of enemies and then the players?
theoretically, yeah. There's no reason why you couldn't, because of the way that the mechanic was split into individualized initiatives, the DM was now free to split up the initiative of their group. Because before it was just a team versus team. Now that all the players individually can act and have their own initiative, there was nothing stopping the DM from splitting up the enemies in any fashion they wanted.
But going back to the first one, when it was just team versus team, would it be possible to have 3 teams instead of just 2? Would that have worked mechanically? Would there have been a way to...
It wouldn't, because it was a pass-fail system. It was just whoever won the initiative would go first, and it was very black and white. There was there was the party team, and then there was the enemy team.
Gotcha.
There wasn't the idea of having such a all of that would have been handled with the enemy team. If they were surrounded, the enemy team would already have been surrounded, and they would all just go first as a surrounding
I was
force.
thinking if the 2 enemy teams were also fighting each other and the players.
If you try to go that far, it would just be individualized. Like that team's going to attack that team, and they're
then that would be a turn,
and then you would attack. Like it wouldn't
Interesting.
really be this stacking motion. It would be you would resolve each individual conflict as
Sure. Okay.
Let's see here. All right. So another example of the initiative is like if you rolled a 3, but you had a casting time of 2, your spell won't resolve until segment 5. So you have to keep that in mind when it comes to other people and what they are doing.
Yeah.
So combat handling, or the encounter handling, so very similar to before, but we have a few extra specialties. Surprise was still handled the same way. D6 roll on a 1 or a 2, you are surprised. Some monsters surprised on a 1 to a 3 or a 1 only, so it was kind of dependent. They started playing around with surprise, not as universal.
Sure.
Morale was now more codified. It was a little bit more encouraged. NPCs and monsters had to make morale checks to avoid fleeing.
Okay.
So if they took too much damage, if they're, if
Too many of their allies
die, yeah. So there was a lot of reasons why you could adjust that. You got reaction adjustments. So some creatures reacted based on alignment or charisma of the party. So this was also introduced now to where the party cohesion and the party build certain like undead maybe, you know, against like clerics, because you have you know, turn
And if you're
undead.
doing wild stuff that's changing your alignment, you might not be able to do that stuff anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Initiative ties. Oh, and then initiative ties were replaced with the idea that weapon speed and spell speed interacted now. So it wasn't a whether they're, you know, whoever wins, everyone goes. It was initiative was now broken down into the individuals instead of a team base. So
Got you.
obviously that was a little bit of a difference. And then we had a highly detailed, but often still led to a lot of DM deciding due to mechanical complexities.
Sure.
So while this helped solve some problems, it still was down to the DM because not everything, there wasn't a clear rule for every instance. So
Yeah.
while this was a brand new rule to play with, there was still a lot of bugs to work out.
Fair
So
enough.
here's an example of that kind of confusion. If a character with a speed factor of 4 attacks a spellcaster with a casting time of 3, right?
Mhm.
They're both gonna have different initiatives, but if the character with a speed factor of 4 attacks a spellcaster with a casting time of 3, does the attack interrupt the spell if both are on the same segment? So let's say if they're both gonna happen on segment 6, which means that the attacker, the melee attacker with a speed of 4, technically his initiative was 2. He was initiative 2.
Okay.
Said he was going to attack the mage, and it's going to take him 4 segments to take his attack off because of his speed. The caster, on the other hand, the next initiative 3, the caster's turn. So after the caster decides to cast a spell, it'll take 3 segments. They will both happen on segment 6.
Sure.
There is no rule that states whether or not the spell is interrupted.
Sure.
This is 100% up to the DM on whether or not this would interrupt the spell. You could make some would have made the argument the melee had first initiative, so first initiative wins. That was some house rules. Other house rules was simultaneous. He's going to literally attack as your spell goes off. And it didn't matter if you put him to sleep, he still attacked you in the middle of putting him to sleep. Other DMs would decide based on the type of attack, right? Like what was the spell doing? What was the attack? So it was really just, there was no rule for that. It was, hey, here's segments. Well, what happens if this happens? We didn't plan for that.
Try it, find out.
Yeah, it was not play tested to that
I could totally
extent.
see the argument that somebody would be like, well, whoever has the whoever's thing that they're doing takes less time would go first.
So the wizard in that case,
In this
would have
case,
gone
the
first
wizard, because-
and that's how I kind of see it too. Is well, theirs was still easier regardless.
Yeah, theirs is going off quicker. Yes, you started it a hair before them, but you know, especially because they're going off at the same time, quicker's quicker.
Yeah. So there was no rule for that. So that was the
But
fun the DM tried to do. So less often did that happen, but
Sure.
it was still there. With spellcasting integration, you still had to declare your spells before the initiative was rolled. So it was still I am going to do this and I'm burning this spell regardless. Interrupted if the caster did take damage before the spell resolved, but now instead of it being a whether or not you won initiative, it's strictly on whether or not you took damage before your segment time was up.
Sure.
And again, I feel like that gave a lot more tacticalness to the mage on being able to decide what spells to cast based on the casting time, instead of just purely, I hope we win initiative.
Yeah. A lot more flexibility.
Each spell had its own unique casting time based on its level, so requiring precise resolution of tracking. And I was able to find a snippet from the DMG page 65 someone shared online, which is great. Damage or interruption during any part of the casting time results in loss of the spell. So that is straight from the DMG. Any amount of damage at all was immediate loss. It wasn't just, oh, it didn't go off, that's gone. Like, you burnt it up even though it didn't go off. And again, that's still, again, thinking about the ways that I have made certain decisions, it's amazing to see the influences that those decisions came from. Like, that is a decision I've always held to. Just because your spell doesn't go off does not mean you should keep the magic. I don't believe in that. I think that is a min-maxer's paradise, but I don't necessarily agree.
I agree with that, but see, I might take it a step further and say something to the effect of, if it hasn't gotten to your segment yet, if you haven't gotten the opportunity to start, theoretically, I might not make you lose it. But like, if you had already started casting it and you were in the middle of your casting time,
and that's different. It does specifically state like you have to be in the casting. So if let's say your initiative is 5 and you got attacked and hit on initiative 3, your spell's not affected.
So you keep your magic.
because your spell's not in process. It's
See,
interruption.
that's
It's from start to finish. So it's
Okay.
starting on your initiative and
Got you.
ending on the segment that after
I'm
it's
on board
added.
with that.
That's
I'm
okay.
100% on board
but
with that.
But this is where it comes from. When I think of,
I thought it was if you say you're casting it and you take damage, period.
no, only once you've begun it
Okay.
because it's interrupted.
Yep.
You can take damage and not be in the middle of a spell. But the moment you have started
the
your
middle of a-
initiative,
yep.
it's you're screwed. Which again, I prefer that over the 2-team basis, right? But yeah, this is
Sure.
definitely my
Okay.
the
Okay.
feeling that I get when I think of how spells should work is you put in the effort, right? The only way I would say that that's not, that wouldn't happen is, let's say you have a wand and it has a word or a phrase that you have to say, and you're about to do something stupid and a party member casts silence or tackles you mid-sentence. I would say the spell doesn't go off. You did not complete the action word. But a spell itself, the moment you try to cast it, you've basically said, "Hey, let's go." You know what I mean? Like you've popped the bottle.
You're gathering the
bubbles
magic.
are
It's
fizzing.
coming up. Yep.
If you cancel it, the carbonation's still gone, right? You popped that bottle. The carbonation's there whether you use it or not. If that's a good analogy, I
do like that. I do like that.
All right. So examples in gameplay. So let's say that the cleric declares hold person. It has a casting time of 5 segments.
Okay.
Party wins the initiative with the 4. Cleric spell will resolve in segment 9. So this is in the case of you're still using team. Remember, it's on the DM's choice whether you use team-based or individual. But this case, let's say that the cleric rolls a 4. But the spell will not go off for 5 segments. That means that the cleric spell will not resolve until segment 9.
Okay.
Now, the enemy wizard had an initiative of 5. So technically started after this
Yes.
wizard. But cast Magic Missile, which only has a casting time of 1 segment. So Magic Missile will go off in segment 6, while the party's wizard will not go off until segment 9. In that particular case, Magic Missile will hit on segment 6 because it's auto hit, and it will automatically cancel the cleric holds person because the cleric took damage.
Theoretically, isn't everything an auto hit now? Because as long as you win initiative,
Oh yeah,
that's all that matters.
yeah. In
Everything's
this, well, no,
okay.
you still have to roll. Remember, you still have to roll the d20s. All your actions go first, but you still remember even in OD&D you still have the d20 to hit. You still have the d20 and the damage.
Really?
Yeah, you
I
still had to roll.
thought you said it just happens.
All of your actions happen all at once, and what you said is going to happen, but you still have to roll. You don't auto hit. You just all your actions happen.
Interesting. Does that mean you still gonna roll damage and stuff like that?
Yeah, remember, so in OD&D, all damage was d6, and then you just rolled d20s to see if you hit them. Same thing with this one. You're still rolling to see if you hit
Wild. Okay.
during
Okay,
the
okay.
initiatives, and you still roll the damage, but that's why there's the interruption option. It's not guaranteed interruption, it's only if you took the damage.
Gotcha.
But because in this particular case, because the party's cleric already started their spell, and they took damage from Magic Missile, done. That whole person will not go off anymore.
That sucks.
Very much sucks.
That sucks.
But again, when you're thinking about
But that's exactly what you got to do.
Yes.
Now, the question is, well, because so both parties have to say what they're going to do before initiative goes off. Now,
essentially everyone has to decide what they're doing, and it's usually a honor system more on the DM. Like the DM would be like, okay, I know what I'm doing. What are you all doing? And then being like, here's what they're going to do. So you could probably have the DMs out there who would have been like, oh, that's a 5 segment. I'm going to do a 1 segment just to fuck with you. But in reality, that's probably not what the case was. It was probably the case that mage had only 2 spells and the other one didn't make sense.
Sure.
Like more often than not, it was that, in my opinion. It was much more of an honor. Because again, the DM was there in these first editions. The goal was not a win. The goal was for everyone to enjoy the story.
Sure.
Right? Like this was still so much more about the narrative than it was about the rules.
Sure.
So I don't really think DMs would be going out of their way to
Kill the players.
really, well, I mean, let's not go that far. I think they were trying to do that, but they weren't trying to screw the players to not have fun.
Sure.
I want to kill you and make you enjoy the death, but I don't want to literally
Yes.
make you feel like you can't play your character just because I'm smarter than you.
Yes.
Or because I have an advantage of knowing what you can do and pre-planning it when you can't. Like that's where I feel a big divide happened in the later editions when the DMs and players started treating it like a versus match instead of a collaboration.
Yeah, I feel like when, again, it's those few people that never, you know, when you were a kid and like you were playing imagination with your friends or whatever, and there's the one kid who's always like, no, I got an invisible shield that blocks that, or no, I can fly, or no.
Yeah, they just didn't want to lose. Period.
Like,
they just had to be better.
I feel like anybody like that finds DMing is gonna be the one who like wants to. And so I don't know if that just never happened in earlier editions, or if
you know what those DMs are? They're the DMs that railroad you with the NPC savior. They're the ones that put you in an impossible situation to not TPK you because they have a really cool NPC that's going to save you. That's that kind of DM.
The DSS Machina kind of
like that's how I feel like that's the kid that grew up with the whole I have an invisible shield. That's the one that just says you're playing my story and I just want to look like
the hero.
Yeah.
My NPCs are cool.
Exactly. Shall we move on to second edition?
Let's get it.
All right, moving on to seconds. All right, so round structure and time flow for AD&D second edition, published in 1989. One round was still considered 1 minute, still retaining it all the way from the 1E structure. We are still using segments, 10 per round, 6 segments per segment, or 6 seconds per segment, 10 segments per round, 1 round per minute.
Okay.
Initiative was rolled each round. This is where we finally get the introduction of dynamic initiative. Favorite, and a hill I will die on. Dynamic initiative is always better.
Each round or each segment?
Each round. Each segment is a round.
Because
remember, each segment is the action that you took and how long it takes to go off, but each round is a new initiative. Previously,
so isn't that what we always did though? Like it was every time, every minute, every round, you would roll initiative.
yes, that's how I've always played, but in 5th edition, it's one time. You roll initiative and you keep that initiative for the whole combat. If you rolled and you're third in initiative...
No, I'm talking about like for OD&D, what we were just talking about. That's what you're saying is you would keep that same...
Well, remember, in OD&D, it was a win-loss. So you just rolled D6s and it was every time whoever won or lost. This is the first time where every round, because everybody goes independently.
So there weren't rounds in OD&D. It was just like after that one initiative, the combat was over.
Well, then you would keep going. It would be another round. And then what are you doing? What are you doing? Roll your D6. Who goes, what
to
team?
me, I view that as dynamic initiative because every round you're re-rolling initiative to see who wins the round.
That's more of a contestant. That's more of a contested.
Yeah.
That's not dynamic initiative is something that changes your placement and your action time every single round.
I see what you're saying.
It's not a contested. This is choosing where in round 1 you could go first, and then in round 2 you could go last.
Yeah.
That's completely different than what we've seen before. Because before it was purely
because you can actually order yourself, and there's more than just 2 places. Because in the first one, theoretically, in my mind, it's still dynamic initiative. There's just only 2 places to be. It's either first or last, and either you win or you don't. Either you go before them or you don't.
I just don't look at it as dynamic because I look at the contested. There's only 2 options. Of course, there's always a flip.
Yes,
but yeah. So
I get what you're saying.
This is the first time they said, "Hey, why doesn't everyone get their own initiative, and everyone gets to go in a different order every time?" Really playing into the idea of as the battle progresses, you are thinking and reacting and feeling differently, and that's my favorite. This is that hill I will die on. Is dynamic initiative is the better of the 2. Like, I don't like 5Es where if I'm 7th in line, I'm always 7th in line for the rest of the battle. That does not feel good. It does not make any sense that I have to literally, like, all of the, like, you're telling me the moment action, like, that's not how the flow of combat works.
I will say, I do agree that's not how the flow of combat works. I will also say it, for me as a player, it doesn't feel as bad because after round 1, it kind of doesn't matter. It's just a circle.
But I do think it matters though because it takes away a lot of tactical options. Because if you're too far away from an ally in initiative, you never will be able to get to do that thing.
Exactly.
When you go back.
But that's what I'm saying is it's like it doesn't feel like you're last after first initiative. It just feels like you're not next.
I disagree though because when you have like 10 people fighting, a lot happens. I mean, yes, always a lot happens in between each of your things. But I still think that being at like the top of the round it gives you that advantage because while you could say that at any point people are still like at a certain like health position, I don't know, and maybe it's just a perspective thing. Maybe because at any given point you could see that the circle it doesn't matter, But I feel like when it comes to player agency, being able to choose what you want to do and working with your team, I feel like you can't really accomplish cool stuff. But then again, 5th edition isn't about the narrative of the cool. It's about the mechanics, right? I feel like back in the day, being able to say, hey, whenever we're next to each other, which could potentially happen, we should be able to do these, like this little combo move. And that's what I like about Dynamic Initiative, is the idea that you can use it to your advantage.
Sure.
But I also think back then there was just more things that took more advantage of your place in initiative. Whereas now, like you said, as long as someone still has health, it doesn't really matter. But I think back then what you could do gave you better better advantages if you were in certain positions.
I definitely do not know enough about what you could do back then, but I do agree that there's not enough in what I would consider current editions that gives you opportunities like that. Again, I think, like you said, it's just not a piece of a mechanic that they've invested in at all. Especially because, like you said, they got rid of Dynamic Initiative, and it's very static. It's very just, you can do what you can do. It's more about what you can do, and if what you do lasts for longer than this round, then maybe somebody can play off of it, type deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think like it would be really cool to like want to do certain things, and that's when I would get into trying to do that in 5th edition with holding actions and setting up for certain things and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So,
And that's where a lot of that came into play with this Dynamic Initiative, is being able to play with holding actions, ready actions,
yeah,
being able to, to play off. And that's where that whole, again, that team dynamic is where I kind of fell in love with it. But again, Initiative was dynamic for the first time. It was a D10 per character now. So so instead of being a D6 plus your modifiers of the weapon or the spell, it's just you are now in that position. But you still had segments, so spells still did have segment time, but you could just be pure last, and everything goes last, right?
So, but would it still go off this round? So my question is, if I rolled a 9 and I wanted to cast a spell that takes 5 segments to go off, would it go off next round, or will it go off at the end of the round?
It will go off still at the end of the round.
So if only one segment has passed, it's still going to go off.
It would still go off at the end. Yeah, it would still go off at the end of the round, just because it's still your action of that round. So being last just meant you were last.
And it meant it was damn near impossible for anyone to interrupt me.
Pretty much,
and lose my spell. So I can almost guarantee, if I was the wizard and I was casting in the last place of initiative, no one's going to interrupt my spell.
True. We have a hydrate from Cart. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Interesting. Okay.
Again, as they developed it, they changed to a D10. Bugs happen. Right? They couldn't figure out how everything worked. They just had to figure out how to make it work the best. But you still had modifiers from spells, weapons, and actions, which would affect your result. So you could get negatives to your, your initiative to make you better in the initiative, or you can get things that would cost you time. We have a question. So how would you run mass battles in this? Like if you had 20 or more creatures? So there are 3 ways that I would do this. There are 3 ways the original AD&D, OD&D, and Frozen Second did this. So with 2nd edition and earlier, with 2nd edition and later, you could do the difficult way, which was everything has its own initiative.
Sure.
And of course, you could always make it easier on yourself. And a lot of DMs did this. They would break your enemies. If you had like a ton of enemies, like a party of 6 and 10 enemies, you'd break your enemies into 2 or 3 or 4 groups. And then you would handle their initiatives as a group, right? So these 4 enemies, and these 2 enemies, right? Versus your party. So these 4 just, I handle all of them on the same initiative, all of them on the same initiative. You either do it individually, you break them into the groups, or even earlier than this, you treat them all as one unit or break them into groups. But you can also, in earlier editions, they would basically lean into mass combat, like the war game tactics, like chainmail. Sure. And there were extensive rules on this as early as OD&D and before that, but you would basically treat it like mass combat. And for the most part, most of those rule sets were based on maneuvers. So you would there's actually a lot of really fun rules for mass combat in D&D. Like if you had an army and you wanted to go take over a kingdom, you would count the size of your army, count the size of their army. There'd be like buffs to like morale and stuff. But at the end of the day, you'd have like a list of actions you could take. you know, and I have a list of actions I could take, and we would both secretly make a list of like what action we're going to take, and kind of like Risk. We would then do the round where we would both reveal what our actions were. We would both reveal what our actions were, and the book would play out based on what you chose and what I chose. It would actually play out, or it would actually describe what happens. So like, let's say you wanted to do a flanking maneuver and I wanted to do a stabilization maneuver where we bunkered down.
Sure.
The book would say flank versus stabilization. You know, flank deals X number of damage but loses X number of people in the process.
Sure.
So kind of like with how Risk would do it, or your HP is your whole force.
Yeah.
And then the next round would happen, and then you would both decide like, hey, I'm going to do a penetrating maneuver and you guys are going to do a routing maneuver. And the game would be like, hey, your routing maneuver happens to coincide with their pressure maneuver. So as you go this way to skirt around them and push them, they just move into the position you were. You guys switch spots, no damage. So shit like that would happen. So where you had like 5 options, I had 5 options, and every combo had an outcome. And so it's basically more or less like Rochambeau, but with D&D.
Interesting.
So that's how the original, more or less, that was the most simplistic way I can put it, how a lot of the mass combat used to work. And then as you got into initiatives, you either broke it down into groups or you just suffered through individual gameplay.
An option for groups that I like to use is enemy class and not necessarily enemy location.
Yep, that's another one.
It's like
all the archers,
all the archers, all the brutes, all the infantry type deal. Like
really depends on the balance of the party.
Yeah. For me, that works and just makes the most sense-ish because, I feel like all the brutes are probably going to have roughly the same type of dexterity. All the grunts are probably going to have roughly the same. It's like when you see on the creatures where it gives you the average damage they do.
Yep.
I feel like it would be whatever I roll for them is going to be the average initiative of all of them. Type deal.
I like that. That's totally fine as well. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to go about your approach to it to make it feel good for your players.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so with that, action types and terminology. So of course we still have not yet formalized everything just yet, which is kind of interesting because I do have things like bonus actions, free actions, and all of that. But that wasn't from second edition. That was the things that cannibalized from the other editions.
Amazing.
You could generally move and attack or move and cast. So movement was now much more tactical, and it was now much more formalized for you. So it was something that you could control, especially with individual initiatives.
Sure.
Instead of it just being part of the group and part of the outcome, it was much more a part about what you were doing and how you were using that as an action. Drinking potions, opening doors, switching weapons, all of these were allowed, but no definition of what they would cost. So more often than not, again, DM discretion. If you're not really in the middle of anything, it's free to do. If you're in the middle of something, like if you're in the middle of combat, opening a door may not take an action, like your actual attack action. Sure. You may just be able to like kick it open or whatever. Maybe some DMs would, again, if you're in the middle of a clash, maybe you're not allowed to drink a potion right now without sacrificing your attack because you have to keep the sword back. Mm-hmm. But if he's 10 feet away, pop it. Like there's no one there to stop you, right? So still kind of up to the DM, no specific action requirements for these kind of things. And then weapon speed and casting times still affected your initiative, but they were treated more loosely. So again, if you're late in initiative, you're still just the last to go off, right? It didn't trail into the next round because that would be way too complicated and overworked to like have all of that. So yeah, it was basically just the segments were there to still allow for what happened when, but it wasn't a very strict, it was, but it wasn't strict if it takes this long. Like, if you're last in initiative, it just means that all of your actions happen last. You could still think of it as you're just struggling to get the magic going. So it still goes off in the same time frame until it technically took you long enough. You know what I mean? Like, it was still left to the DM to decide. Which again, I look at things like this and it makes me realize why I created, like why I homebrewed so much and why I have all of these tiny little reasons for things, right? Why I handle action economy the way I do, why I handle initiative the way I do. Because looking at where they came from and looking at where we are, it's just a lot of it was what makes sense, not what did we say you had to do.
Yeah.
And I'm so much more into leaning into that.
I agree.
Combat counter and handling. Surprise, morale, and reaction rolls were finally clarified in the core rules. So
Okay.
now we actually had more about how surprise worked. It wasn't just a base roll. There was actually like mechanics, you getting snuck up on, were you asleep? The concept of why did you get surprised, not just you were surprised.
Got you. Okay.
Morale was a lot more codified, so enemies, groups had much more reasons to have morale, which again, you know, from playing at High Point, that's a big thing to me.
Yep.
I mean, if someone has a leader and you kill the leader first, that's going to affect the people who, you know, what are they going to do? Especially if I role played it, the leader is constantly barking out orders, that's going to drastically change. And see, again, for me, as a DM, that's something that I like to add as a secret clue, not a secret clue, but as like a blatant clue that's not a clue. If I give you an encounter and there's one guy barking orders, it's more or less a subtle clue to let you know that they can't operate without him, right? It's not just a narrative just to make it look cinematic and cool. It has a purpose. If you watch these guys walk in and they say nothing to each other, but they operate like a fucking unit, you should probably be afraid. Because they don't have to talk to know what to do. Like, they're trained.
You need to kill all of them.
But if you have one guy who seems to be like the leader, that probably means the other ones aren't effective together, right? I like adding those kind of inspirational hints because whether you use them or not won't change the outcome. But they can.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like I do that so if you don't get it, you're not going to win. But it is something that will give you a leg up if you catch on.
Very fair.
Let's see here. Thaco. So to hit armor class 0 replaces the original attack tables. One of the probably most controversial aspects, probably one of the most controversial aspects of all of D&D's rule sets ever. Thaco is probably the one that rubs the most people the wrong way.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people complain about it, but I mean, it's like anything else. Once you figure it out, it's really not that bad. Like,
exactly. Well, and again, this was the simplicity. Everyone tries to say it doesn't make any sense. It is quite literally you roll a d20, right? Roll a d20, take that number. Subtract that result from your Thaco. So if you're to hit 0, so to hit an AC of 0, if you're to hit 0 is a 10, and you roll a 5, right? You minus that from, you know, your Thaco, and that's the AC that you hit. That's it. It's that fucking, like, that was how simple it was. Roll, subtract, that's the AC you hit. If you rolled an 18, right? Subtract that from 10.
So different than rolling and adding any bonuses you have.
Oh, it's so different than
and
adding
then
bonuses.
Seeing I hit that AC.
Exactly, because it's quite literally just that. If you rolled an 18 and your Thaco was a 10, you hit an AC of -8. It wasn't fucking difficult. Like, it was just different. And I know people like big number go up. Awesome. I think there's two reasons I know why Thaco holds a special place in my heart and why I use it. I don't think it's superior. I prefer it for two reasons. One, it was the first thing I learned. And so it's just always going to just have that space of, it's just what I've known and what I grew up with in D&D. But the second aspect is I'm a contrarian. I like things to be different. And I've said this before, I think mods ruin dice rolls. Modifiers ruin dice rolls. The concept of I can't roll below a 30, then why bother rolling the fuck? What's the point? If you can't roll below an 100, what is 20 even doing for you at that point? Like at a certain point, my mind's just like, if you're rolling that high, the value of the dice is changing your abilities so like minutely.
If your modifier is bigger than the dice you're rolling, I feel like that's a problem.
That's my thing. It's like when you say I can't roll below a certain thing, and it's like at that point the numbers don't make sense anymore, which is why I keep my modifiers low and still always result around the die roll, because the die roll is the representation of your character's skill. Yes, they could do all of these things, or it's not their skill. Their skill is all the things that they could do, but their implementation is the die roll. You know, I've watched you do dozens of backflips in our lifetime. Like I've watched you perform publicly and doing backflips, and it looks awesome. I've also watched you eat shit doing backflips.
Also true.
And that's not during your practice. Like you were practicing for your performance. But that was long after you learned it. You learned it. You know how to do it. You can do it in front of hundreds of people. But in front of 3, when you're practicing, you've eaten shit. Why? Because implementation doesn't always work. The idea that your mods can get you to the point where you can't fail something doesn't make sense. There needs to be a minute chance that you don't implement properly once in a blue moon.
I totally agree. I think that what you're describing is tremendously more realistic than anything that we like to observe today. There's always going to be an opportunity for whether it be the environments or your own internal environment, which is constantly changing. Whatever your mental state is, whatever you're stressed about, whatever is going on can affect how you execute whatever skill you're trying to execute, and you can have these potential issues. I think what it comes down to is what are you trying to get out of the game?
Yeah.
Like, because a lot of the times it's like you can I definitely agree that is a much more accurate and more realistic way to articulate a lot of these things in the game. I think the only thing that I'll say is I don't necessarily mind it to the extent that I can always adjust what it is. Like, in order to say, okay, you get a plus 20 to your roll, all right? Well, now your DC is a 35, which means you have to roll higher than a 15 to get it. I will make whatever it is be whatever it needs to be.
I just prefer to keep the numbers easier. Just keep it down to the 15 and let's not worry about the 35.
Like, you don't have to stack it, but I think a lot of the times people want to feel like I am a superhero.
Yeah.
And I think it's the difference between, like,
it's the video game logic. It's the big number go up.
Okay,
let's face it.
Think about the Ninja Turtles. The Ninja Turtles are just turtles that are ninjas. Like, if they were to go up against the Justice League or the Avengers, like, any one of them could squash all 4 of them, because it's different. And so I think that people are not trying to be Ninja Turtles. They're trying to be the Justice League, right?
Which I'm fine with, but that's the difference of, in my opinion, that's the difference of gameplay between pre-10th and post-10th level. To me, that's the defining feature. Post-10th level, you become you go from being the Ninja Turtles into the Avengers, and 10th level is that turning point, in my opinion.
Sure.
That's how I at least like to structure my gameplay, is getting to 10th level is you learning all of the mechanics. Past 10th level is you showing me what you've learned, which is probably why I wait so long and I really grind out most people to 10th level, is because it gives you enough time to learn all of the mechanics in the most unique and creative ways. So now that you get all the powers, now you understand what mechanics those powers are using.
Sure.
And you'll be much more beneficial, you'll be better using them. So I think that's kind of part of the influence. I will say, though, that second edition was also the first attempt for them to, well, not their first attempt. Second edition was their biggest step away from wartime gaming. It was the biggest step that they've done away from large group and, like team versus team, and really stepped into the individualized character play, which I think, again, is worth note, because even in first edition, it was still more influenced by wartime gaming, right? They still had roll tables.
Yeah.
This is the first time that every weapon, every character did their own thing, and everything was calculated per that person and per their actions, instead of this larger narrative-based, outcome. So I definitely always like to note that second edition was really that first introduction into AD&D being a individual player game instead of a team game.
I feel that.
All right. So spell class and integration. Spell list segments, spell list had segment-based casting times still. So we were still in the segments.
Okay.
Casting time can be interrupted by damage, same as the first edition. But it did begin the shift towards a per round resolution, and no longer the spells are the full round or the full minute. So before, again, the spell was just goes off, and then we started going into the segments, based on whenever you start. But now each spell is much more codified, much more structured within the segments, when you start, when it finishes, when it can be interrupted. And we're just looking more at each spell has also been they were rewritten to better fit into a 10 segment time frame
Segment mentality.
instead of just being these ideas that it was probably more likely going to take the whole round. Because even before in first edition and OD&D, most of the spells, unless you rolled first on initiative, most of the spells were going to take 5+ segments.
Sure.
So they were just mostly going to take the entire round. Now we get segments of like 1. Now we get spells that are popping off and being able to be more tactically used than, well, I was first in initiative, but my whole team goes first, and then hopefully I don't get hit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Before, again, glass cannon, you were just kind of out in the open, hoping you didn't
Like
get
I
hit
said,
first.
rolling bad initiative would be really good for them early on.
Yeah. And then, so an example of the gameplay, so the wizard would begin casting web with a casting time of 2. The initiative rolled individually, so they rolled a 4. So they, with a 2 segment time, they would cast their spell in segment 6. Now, if an enemy fighter had an initiative of 5 and went to go after the wizard, if they would hit the wizard in segment 5, the spell would fail.
Mm-hmm.
But if the wizard, or if the fighter hit the wizard in, say, segment 3, nothing would happen.
Also, the spell wouldn't go off.
Because he hasn't started casting it yet.
Right.
So he would only do the damage, but then the wizard would still get his opportunity to cast a spell.
Oh,
Remember, because he had to
still
start. Because again, if the wizard is on initiative 4, but gets attacked in initiative 3, the wizard hasn't started their turn yet. There is no interruption. It's only if they get attacked after their initiative begins and the spell
So
starts.
in older editions, they would not lose the spell slot, but they also wouldn't get to do anything.
Yeah, in the older editions, if the enemy team won the initiative and they got damaged, it was just purely because it was just assumed they hit first. This was the first time, because everything was individualized, you had to hit them in the cast. So if they had a 4 cast thing, you had to hit them in that casting of 4. So if their initiative was 2 and you hit them at 1, spell wasn't even started yet. You had to hit them when the spell, between the spell start and stop.
How was this a scenario where, and this might just be per table, but like, was it supposed to be common knowledge what initiative was? Is everybody at the table aware of the initiative order?
Oh yeah, everybody would roll their D10,
But it
and
would be
everybody
public.
would be placed in order. Yeah, everyone
Okay.
would know so everyone would know what order you're gonna
If
technically go.
I wanted to stop the wizard, even if I didn't know what they were casting, I would have to plan my attack that it would specifically hit them.
Yes.
During the
And this is back in the day where even that in some tables would have been considered metagaming.
Interesting.
Like it would have been considered bad form for you to take extra time. Like if you just happen to catch on to that, that's one thing. But to like go out of your way to like plan that out and even openly tell people like, hey, we gotta attack, telling someone else, hey, attack the wizard on this segment so you can, or don't attack him on this segment, I'll attack him to interrupt his spell. That would have been considered bad form in this early on. It would become more okay as we develop the rules, but as early as that was, it was just the idea that you were supposed to play from the instinct,
Right.
not from the rules. And
Yeah.
again, this was also back when not everybody had books. So yes, you would all know initiative, but it was more tracked by the DM. So even though you could pay attention, some DMs wouldn't tell you what their initiative roll was. Some DMs would just tell you.
See,
in
I even
order.
think about this like from a character perspective, not a player perspective. Like, if I'm in this battle and I'm going to attack the wizard, and I know that whenever I attack them, like throughout experience, if I know that whenever I attack them, their spells don't go off, like specifically when they're in the middle of casting them,
Yeah.
like I might actually do that as a player.
Yeah,
It's
well,
like,
and this is where reactions would happen. This is where a lot of players would say, I'm going to hold my action, and if he lifts a finger, pulls out a material, or speaks a word, I'm after him. And that would be it. You would just sit there and people would just watch, like archers would just be like, I'm just going to point my arrow at that wizard. The moment he does anything spell related, I'm letting it loose. And that would be their whole turn. So the moment the wizard casts a spell, interrupted. So that's where that tactical gameplay would become. That would be fine, but it was the spirit of the game was to be more, what is your character doing in the moment, not let me identify every.
yeah.
So
But
again,
that is what your character's doing in the moment. He's waiting for that cat.
that's different than you being like, okay, your casting time, the enemy's casting time. Okay, so here, like,
Yeah.
overly
No, I totally get
doing it.
that.
But then again, that's where different DMs, different players approached games differently, and you got the division. Some people were all about just nailing down every last little bit, and other people were like, no, you know as little as possible. Your character isn't going to know when he's going to start his spell. You only know if he's doing it right this second. You won't know if he's going to do it in 2 more seconds.
Yeah.
And so this is where you get that dichotomy. You get that really big split starting as early as 2nd edition because you're really giving the audience a choice. Which side of that playing field are you going to be on?
Interesting. Okay. No, I'm here for it.
All right. So moving on to 3rd edition and 3.5. So 3rd edition, round structure and flow of time. Rounds were now reduced to 6 seconds.
Round is 6 seconds.
The round is no longer a combat round of a minute. It is now 1 round is 6 seconds. Each character's turn was the 6-second slot within that round. So everybody was acting simultaneously through that 6 seconds. Your turn was just what you were doing during that 6 seconds. Everybody had the same 6 seconds instead of before where it was you had 6 seconds and then I reacted for 6 seconds. This was purely based on everyone has the same 6 seconds. What are you doing with yours?
Got you.
That's what a turn was. Initiative was tracked with a D20 plus your dexterity modifier, tracked in round order. So
that's kind of what it is now.
Yep. So unique to a 3E, everyone is in the same round but takes turns acting. So your turn is your movement in that shared 6-second space.
Sure.
Again, different way to look at it. Everyone's just happening all at once. It's just you're cinematically breaking down. It's kind of like the and meanwhile also, you know, kind of thing where it's like you're seeing the same battle just from different perspectives.
Yeah, I think that's still okay. No, I get that.
Let's see here. So action types and terminology. So now we get some final understanding about what the fuck we're doing. First off, we get standard action.
Hey.
Something like an attack, casting a spell, or activating an ability. This is a considered standard action now. We have a codified word for it. We have now a codified word for move action. This is moving up to speed, drawing a weapon, or standing up. This is all part of your move action.
You took movement to stand up, and it took movement to draw a weapon. I kind of like that.
You had what was called a full round action. So this would be something like a charge.
Okay, so
a full attack. So if you had multi-attack, a full attack would be all of your attacks. If you had the chance to do multi-attack, or a coup de grace attack.
Oh,
these were all considered full round attacks.
Okay.
Free actions: speaking, dropping items, shouting. We had swift actions.
Okay.
These were with swift actions. You got 1 per turn. These are things like minor abilities such as divine favor. Then you also got immediate actions. You got 1 per round.
Immediate action and a swift action.
1 per turn versus 1 per round. The immediate action were triggered off turn. Something like Featherfall would be considered something that you would be able to trigger off turn.
Oh, so it's like their version of a reaction.
Exactly. An immediate action is a reaction. The swift action,
it's like a bonus action.
Kind of more like a bonus action, or because it's once every not every round, but once every turn. So
what was a turn for them?
A turn. Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, so weird. Swift actions is once per turn, so it happens on your 6 seconds every round. So it's once per round. An immediate action happens off turn. So immediate actions, you get 1 per round or 1 per turn.
Yeah.
But those don't have to happen on your. Those are reactions.
Again, so very similar.
But swift action's more like a bonus action. So
Gotcha.
that's their first version of bonus action, reaction.
Gotcha.
Although I still find it interesting that there's like the full round actions. Those are very unique. I never got to really play with those.
Interesting.
So
yeah, I do like that concept a little bit.
So this economy allowed for 1 standard action plus 1 move action, or 1 full round action, and swift intermediate actions are additive to that because they're like the bonus actions. But yeah, you can either do a standard and a move or 1 full round action. That's it.
I'm not gonna lie, I really like the concept of stealing movement to draw weapons and stuff like that, because I want my players to be able to like do that kind of stuff if you want to like draw, but like I don't want it to be free. But I feel like charging like a whole action feels like
that's why it typically for me will cost like an attack action. Basically, like if you have one weapon and you want to draw a different weapon, like it's going to cost one of those action economies. It's going to cost one of those attack actions.
Sure.
But I don't
mind that either.
I don't equate that to move though, because and again, it may depend on the weapon. I've ruled it both ways. I've had some weapons cost you your move action because of the way you need to take it off, like characters like, the fake way that you can string a bow across your back.
Sure.
That can take a move action because you're actually like having to like whittle around or like get a weapon out of a sack or something. Whereas if it's like a sword, you can draw a sword while you're running.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You can knock your bow while you're running. Those don't take move actions, but there are in cases where a move action would be good. I do definitely agree that moving to get up is always a useful tactic.
Although I think the way they do it in fifth, half your move, I think that's a little...
I break it down in terms of how badly you're knocked down. Like if you're fully prone, half your movement. If you're like just taking a knee, like if someone hits you and you like had to take a knee real quick or like go to your hands, it's only going to cost you 5 feet of movement. Because you're standing up. Standing up is a 5 feet of movement. Coming from prone, that's a whole, I got to reorient my whole body. So I break it down depending upon how you went down.
Yeah.
And again, there is no take a knee condition, but it's thematic. If you take a knee, I'm only going to let you burn 5 just to stand up. Or if you're sitting down and combat starts, you're going to burn 5 for standing up. If you're sitting with your legs crossed, it's going to take you 5 for standing up because it's a quick. If you're laying down, you're cutting half your movement out. Like that's where I draw the line, is if you've been knocked prone, you woke up and you were laying down, whatever reason, that's going to cost way more because you have to get your body oriented, then lift yourself up, then reorient. But a lot of the times when you're taking a knee or sit or in kneeling or sitting, popping up, there's combative ways to do that.
No, I get that. I'd definitely give some people passes on that, like monks and potentially rogues.
I've been okay ruling that. I also put harsher ones, like if you're in full plate mail, standing up takes half your actions or half your movement. Just even if you're just regularly sitting, would still take half your movement if you're in full plate mail. So again, I don't have these like hard line, like I just have a list of all these rules, but depending on the situation, I like the environment to tell me what makes most sense. If you are, sitting in a chair, in full plate mail, maybe I could offer up like, I have my sword here. I can easily stand up. Fine. Cool. 5 feet of movement. If you're on the ground sitting, you're not getting up very quickly in full plate.
Heck no.
You're going to use half your movement for that, right? Laying down.
Only Alphonse Alric is getting a pass on that.
Yeah. And then so laying down or prone in full plate mail, probably taking all of your movement to get up.
Oh, yeah.
But like you said, a rogue, a monk, probably do that little jumpy action. I'll let that be a bonus action. You know what I mean? Like, I'll let you like not use your movement to get up because you can do the little flip thing.
Sure.
Like, again, it's all about situation because again, I'm much more in this older mentality of the narrative should lead. The mechanic should follow.
I don't know if we actually talked about this or if this started or hasn't started, but I remember a mechanic where you could cannibalize certain things in a certain direction, but not another.
That would be the thing. Like you could do
make an action a movement and then a movement a bonus.
Yes, I think that came later down the road, but that also might be fully homebrewed. So we'll see if I added that in here. I don't even know if that's even a codified rule.
I swear, isn't that something that you use in High Point?
Yeah,
and therefore it ingrained in my mind. That was a second edition mechanic.
It might be a third edition. We'll see once we get to third.
Okay,
or we're in third edition, so we'll see if we come up with that here. Because third edition was the first one that codified the structure, so it may have been here that they did it, or it may not have been till fifth. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't remember where I put it in my notes if I have it. So let's look at combat handling. So the combat grid finally became standardized. So it wasn't until third edition that we finally got the the squares that and then eventually the hexes that are obviously superior. But this is it, that we got the 5 foot square. The first official combat grid was finalized here. Now that you're doing individualized combat, we needed game, and you were adding all these things, right? All these different actions, distances. It started to matter more strategically. So we got the 5 foot squares, and this is also where they started introducing things like reach, flanking, and opportunity of attacks, because they all depended specifically on spatial positioning. So when you started adding in things like I should be able to hit someone from further away, well, now we need to know exactly how far they are away from you.
Yeah.
If you're going to do opportunity attacks, it's hard to say, well, this guy ran away. Was he close enough for me to hit him? I need to know, was he close enough for me to hit him? So yeah, that's where we
totally
got
get
the
that.
5 foot squares, is because we started getting these really interesting, unique abilities that needed to know exactly where everybody was. The opportunity attacks occurred first when someone left your threatening square, so moved out of combat. Spell casting was provoked an opportunity attack if you were within melee range.
Yes, I think that. Yeah.
And using ranged weapons while in melee range gave an opportunity attack. So
Gotcha.
right out the gate, when they decided opportunity attacks, these were the first 3 things they knew out the gate were always going to be
Now
targets.
this is in 3rd edition.
Yes.
So does that
Well,
mean
between 3 and 3.5, there's a lot of when it got, when it happened. I'm not exactly sure.
does it say what action economy it used
What do you mean?
to make an opportunity attack? Was it a swift action? Was
So
it a-
opportunity attack would have probably been an immediate action because it's not on your turn, because it's
That's-
triggered off turn.
that's
So
what
that
it
would have
means.
been an immediate action.
Okay.
In order to pull that off.
Okay.
Good question. And they did add something called defensive casting. It did require a concentration check, but it allowed you to safely cast a spell within melee range and not provoke an opportunity attack. So
Okay.
you took a concentration check over an attack.
Now,
Which again, I like that mindset of kind of like why I'm okay with my explanation where the better you are with the weapon, the more you can do with said weapon. Same thing with this one. The more you are aware and the more you can do it, the more proficient you would be in pulling it off in a dangerous position while
Did
still
they-
not taking the attack.
this might not be a question for this stream, but what was the earliest edition they had melee spells?
What do you mean by melee spells?
Like a spell that requires you to be within touch, or like make a melee spell attack.
Probably would have been 3rd. Well, actually, no, 2nd, because you would have like vampiric touch in 2nd edition where it required touch. So there were touch spells early on.
Even those spells could provoke an opportunity attack here.
Yes, because casting them was what put you as vulnerable. Because remember, casting's an ordeal. Especially back then, casting wasn't subtle. It wasn't this little flick of the hand. This was like this was think about Doctor Strange level casting.
Yeah.
Yes, you could, but unless you had defensive spell casting, you're doing this Doctor Strange bullshit before you can touch him. You've given them a lot of time, and you have no weapons, you have no armor. Yeah, back then it was spells made you vulnerable, but defensive spell casting was an option.
Yeah. Okay.
Take it easy, Hoylepa. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your morning. All right, so spell casting integration. Spells generally would require a standard action.
Okay.
Unless otherwise specified, it was pretty much standardized. They were going to take standard actions. There were occasional full round spells, such
believe
as
that.
Summon Monster.
Okay.
So that was just going to take your entire action.
ain't doing nothing else.
Yeah, nothing else. And then, of course, you got the concentration skill to maintain casting amid damage. So, Player's Handbook introduced, if you fail the Constitution check, the spell is lost. So this is the first time you didn't auto lose your spell if you were attacked and took damage. This is the first time interruption was not automatic. You actually had to roll to keep it.
Gotcha.
And this is where we started getting concentration checks.
Gotcha.
So concentration wasn't to maintain the spell's effect. It was to maintain your ability to not
cast.
drop it if you were attacked on time. So I love that. I think that's really cool. And then an example in this. So let's say a wizard has an initiative of 14. On turn, they choose the standard action Scorching Ray. They'll move 10 feet with the move action. They drop their wand with a free action. And then enemy fires arrow before the next turn. Wizard uses the immediate action shield and protects themselves.
I like that.
So those
like
would be
that.
a way that you would be able to just, follow through. And now that they have no wand in their hand, they can probably use their movement action to draw the next wand.
Right. Very interesting.
Yep. All right. Are we ready for 4th? We're almost done, ladies and gentlemen. 2.5 hours in.
We getting it.
2 more editions to go. Don't know how many people are here. Wow, 6 people in chat. Awesome. Glad to see everybody here.
I see 8 on my side.
Oh, 8. Let's go. Okay. Well, let's hurry up and get through 4th edition because no one actually cares about 4th edition,
Wild.
released in 2008.
We need a graphic for 4th edition. Special.
Nobody likes 4th edition. All right. So round structure and time flow. Rounds remained at 6 seconds. So keeping with 3E, they didn't change that. I know, shocker. Each character got 1 turn per round. So again, very similar. Everyone's acting within the same 6 seconds. You all have that same pocket of time. Initiative was a D20 plus your dexterity modifier and fixed order for the whole combat. So again, this is not dynamic initiative. They said once you roll, that's it. You keep that number from here on out. They're the ones that screwed it up.
How dare you, 4th edition?
And actually, wait a second. 3.5. Actually, 3 might have been the first one to take away dynamic. They may have actually. I didn't specify that note. I gotta do better on my notes. All right, so initiative was the D20 plus dexterity modifier, and it was fixed for the whole combat. No more dynamic initiatives. Simultaneity. Got that word right. Simultaneity is abstracted. You're not acting after someone. It's just resolving effects in an order, but everyone is still officially acting simultaneous.
Okay.
So this is where that like experience versus intent changes. We experience this as a very turn-based game, but it is not the intent to be reflected as such.
Sure.
It is everything's just chaotically going on all at once. You just have the unique perspective of being able to see every snapshot of every person's action individually, but it is all one mess of chaos. So unique to 4E, the rules assume cinematic simultaneity, where effects happen during the same 6 seconds, even if resolved sequentially. The biggest difference between the previous editions and 4th editions is the assumption was more on the visual, less on the outcome. So whereas the earliest editions were all about the outcome, this was the first one that's like, the outcome's important, but again, this is for the gaming crowd, right? This was all about like, this was trying to get all the video gamers at the time.
Sure.
So this was really about not what is the best to walk away with, but what was the coolest thing to happen in the moment. So DMs were encouraged to take this as the opportunity to say that this is about the cinematic, whereas OD&D and First D was like, think about the outcome, think about the story, make sure they're intrigued and keep on going. Second and third were like, hey, here's a lot of cool mechanics. You want to tell a good story, but let them interfere with the story.
Let them be a part of it.
4th edition was now of, who cares where you go from here? That's your, like, the story is linear, right? Most of the 4th edition was linear. It was like, yeah, the story is going to continue. You got that already down. What makes them feel badass right now?
Right.
It was much more about them make them feel badass. That's how I got from 4th edition is it's all about spectacle, less about the actual outcome.
Sure.
You know, whether or not you won the battle doesn't matter. Was it a cool battle? That's, I think, what their mindset was, because that's what video games were all about. It didn't matter if you won the round. How cool was that move you did?
Right. Interesting.
So action types and terminology, which we finally got a lot more structure. So standard actions remained. We have primary actions like attacks, casting spells, using one of your powers. Your move actions, you had mood, you had stand up. You also, including it, or in addition from move and stand up, now you had something called shift, was being able to move 5 feet only.
I remember this.
And this was basically before we had disengage, because it was the one thing you could do without provoking opportunity attack.
Yeah.
So it was the first disengage.
Yes.
Before we had it. Now was the first time we had minor actions mentioned. These are things like drawing weapons, activating items, and some of your class powers. This is where we took it away from the movement and made it its own type of action, which I prefer.
Well, didn't
more.
they have, what was the other type of action called in 3rd edition? Because there was the
You have like the swift and the immediate action and the free action, like
the swift
dropping.
action. That's the one. I feel like that's their minor action is kind of akin to the swift action.
But like I prefer drawing weapons being a lower tier action, but still costing something. But again, I don't think it's movement. Minor action makes a little bit more sense.
Sure.
You also have things like free actions. This thing were like quick, no cost activities. So shouting, pointing, things that, dropping something maybe.
Yeah.
And then you also had immediate interrupts. So these things resolved before a trigger, and then you had immediate reactions that they resolve after a trigger.
Okay.
So if someone says, I'm going to do X, you can go, this happens before X or this happens after X.
So
One
it's
or
like
the
in
other.
Magic the Gathering when you say, in response to this, I'm going to do
Versus
this.
interrupting.
Yes.
Yes, very much. You would interrupt or in response to. And here's your answer, sir. You could downgrade actions. Standard could become a move action, a move becoming a minor, but not reverse. It was 4th
Got
edition
you.
who introduced the
4th
official
edition.
cannibalization. But yeah,
I will say that's something that I like. I do like being able to say, hey, I'm not going to spend this part of my action doing this. I would like to spend it doing this. Similar to the idea of a full action, or
Yes.
what 3rd edition called, like, I'm going to take my entire turn to do this bigger thing. Like,
again, these things are great. I love the idea of putting these things in their own separate categories.
Sure.
I'm actually surprised. I thought it was 3.5 that did the downgrade. So
Okay.
I'm glad I have it in the notes because you asked.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was
Very
4th
cool.
edition that that allowed the official downgrade. While I do appreciate this, over the years, I've definitely flip-flopped a lot on this topic. Because again, while I have my own versions of cannibalization of actions, I look at them more as contextual, right? If you are proficient with the weapon and therefore have more attacks, you could naturally do more things with that weapon. Whereas it's not just about a list of actions you can do in your
Sure.
time. To me, it's more about the proficiency of you doing them safely, right? If you're nowhere near an enemy, I'm going to let you do more things. If you are face to face with an enemy, that's why it costs actions, right? If you're nowhere near an enemy, I'm not going to force you to burn an attack to do something. But like if you're an archer, you know, maybe you have two, you know, it's going to take you a lot of quick skill to be able to like fire 2 arrows rapidly.
sure.
If you want to pop a potion, but not lose sight of your target, right? The better the archer you are, the quicker you're going to be able to pop that potion and still get your target, right? In that case, contextual makes more sense. But again, if you're just a fighter, like there is no attack action to take. So you're still cannibalizing your attack action that you won't take. But again, I don't know if I would agree that a swing of your sword is equal to 10 feet of movement.
Sure.
I don't know if movement is equal to dousing a potion. So I like the idea of cannibalism, but sometimes thinking about me swinging my sword is equal to me running 30 feet. How does that work? It doesn't take me the whole 6 seconds to swing my sword, but it does take me the whole 6 seconds to run 30 feet. So that's where I like it, but the direct downgrade kind of starts to break. So sometimes I've been okay with it, and then other times I'm like, how does me swinging my sword equate to me being able to run 30 feet, right? Like, both of those aren't equal in effort. And that's where
Interesting.
I flip-flopped over the years. Overall, I'm fine with it. I just prefer a little bit more context than just this action becomes this whole brand new type of action. I just like the idea of I'm going to give something up to do something else. That's
Sure.
what I'm much more behind.
I do get that.
But for 4th edition, we do have our little unique tip for 4th edition. 4th edition was the first to introduce the action point, what would later become the action surge. The action point, once per encounter, you were able to take an extra standard action on your turn by spending an action point.
Oh, that's right.
So kind of similar to an action surge, but everybody got one.
And that was the other thing is, this is mostly for, well, I feel like it was spells and abilities because they had, what do you call them? Dailies,
Yep.
encounters.
That's why it's a standard action. So your action point only refreshed your standard action, which could be an attack, a spell, or a power.
Right.
And then you can cannibalize that. So your action
But
point,
it's once per encounter you get one of these, and so it's
you get to use one. Once per encounter, you can use one. So yeah, it was like, wasn't once per turn or once per round. It was just once the initiative start, you get one of these per the entire initiative.
It's weird because it feels like it's just a unique encounter power that every player gets.
Exactly.
Is an action point.
That's exactly what it is. It's a, to me, what it is
Not a unique, a common.
it's the clutch option. It's everyone has the option to do a clutch move. You're
Right,
not.
right.
It's not there to be.
Clutch up, bro.
Yeah, it's to me, it's not there to be an extra action for everyone to use at all times. I believe that the action point was designed to be the opportunity that every character needs, right? I critted this guy and you're telling me he has at 1 HP? Bro, I didn't take action point. I'm taking him down.
Yeah.
Clutch moment. The wizard not having one more spell and their buddy almost going down and be like, action point, healing him up, right? It's like the action point wasn't designed to give you more action economy. It's only one per encounter. I truly believe it was there that if the moment hit where you just needed that, if I could just do one more thing on my turn, action point. It was designed for everyone to have their moment to shine once. Wasn't to be spammed. Wasn't like this whole complicated, I get 50 moves. It was your one time to shine. And I think that was actually maybe one of the best things that 4th edition did, because that is kind of that thing that none of the other editions really gave, was a true one-time little nugget opportunity that every player had in their back pocket to be like, if I use it, I could just, because an action point really doesn't do a whole lot in most campaign settings, right?
Sure.
Like an extra attack, an extra spell, woo, cool.
And it's just an action that you get.
Standard action, but again, you can cannibalize the action, right?
Sure.
But that's my thing, is like, it wasn't meant to be a min-maxer's paradise. This was meant to be, you burn that if you can do something cool. And honestly, I kind of have this. It's not a real action point, in the sense of it's not really an economy that everyone has, that at least they know about. But I keep this in mind when a player really wants to, like, again, if someone's really down, you're like, come on, dude, I couldn't just, like, if I see him that bad, you're telling me I couldn't just, like, finish it or do something. And again, if the cinematics and everything lines up where I'm like, you know what, it makes perfect sense, let's just end the combat now, like, you can finish them.
Yeah.
That's me
giving an action point.
It's my choice to give them their action point. They have the economy, they just don't know how to use it. I give it the option. So when they say, like, or sometimes if they want to add something that normally wouldn't be able to happen in their action economy, and how do I justify once in a while being like, this one time you get to do it just because the stars aligned, you have an adrenaline rush. Action point. If you hold back a secret action point, there's your reasoning for, hey, you know what, you have an adrenaline rush, I'm going to let you jump that extra 10 feet this time.
Sure.
Or, you know what, I'm going to let you get a bonus attack that's not really an attack. Or you stabbed him, I'm going to let you twist it for some extra damage. Like, you want to do that little extra thing and you're not being abusive about it, I'm going to throw you an action point. Go ahead, do the thing that I'm not going to let you do later down the road, right? This is a one time, it's because this moment you got to do it, but it's not something your character's going to learn how to do.
Sure.
And that's why I do think the action point was really, really good for 4th edition, and why I don't call it an action point. In reality, it's just I keep the dynamic of allowing characters and players to be cool.
Yeah.
But it essentially is influenced by the idea of everyone has a little bit of that clutch reserve, that something in them that should always be allowed to come out when it's going to let them shine as their character.
Sure.
And again, it's not just to get the last hit. It's the barbarians raging and they crit, and the guys at 1 hit point, let them have that.
To get that little extra oomph, and he just pulls it all the way through their neck.
Or it's that whole thing of, like, you hit him, you could tell he's just done, and you're like, I just drop my thing and I just grab him by the neck and I'm just like, you're done, and then I smash his eyes in. Like, it's just that thing of, I would never have allowed you to do that in any other situation. But you know what? Right now, it's just too cool to let go.
Yeah.
Some people might call it the rule of cool. I just feel like it's a dynamicism I like for the narrative, and you can call it an action point if you want.
Sure.
But I appreciate it. I really appreciate that it's a true mechanic that gives every player an opportunity to really shine.
No, I for sure vibe with that.
And be that, like, cornerstone of the combat. All right, moving into combat handling. So this was designed around the tactical grid combat and powers with defined effects. So you talked about this before, the encounters, the dailies, the at-wills, and this was specifically designed around the new combat grid that 3rd edition had just done. So this was very much structured on having minis or having some sort of gamepad, very much like a video game. Everything was visualized, right? They wanted a lot of good visuals for this. The encounter was basically setup, initiative, and structured turns. Powers were explicitly tagged by certain types of uses. So you had at-will, you had encounters, you had dailies. These were limiters on how often that these powers could happen. You also had action types and targeting area. So whether single target, AoE,
Right.
as well as the action type that it actually was, whether it was a standard action or sometimes minor actions and whatnot. Also, something else that was unique to 4E for combat was roles. So they leaned heavily into everyone leaning into or playing their roles. So you had defenders, controllers, strikers, and leaders. Governed the governing was designed more by the roles. I wrote this weird. The roles that you chose to play, the defender, the controller, the striker, the leader, actually influenced more about your playstyle and your character build than even your class did. Like it was really designed for you to play and cover a section of the party, right? Like being a healer meant being a healer. Being a tank meant being a tank, not just having the guy with the most armor.
Right.
Like you needed to every combat absorb damage. That person needed to be putting out heals. It wasn't I have a couple heals if we need it. No, you are going to need it. Everyone had a purpose. And I kind of liked it, but I liked it as a combat tactic, but I didn't like it as a gameplay tactic or mechanic. I don't like being structured into a role. I like the story being told by the people that are playing it. If three people want to play a campaign where they're all three rogues, fuck it. Let's play a fucking rogue campaign.
Right.
Where all you're doing is trying to break into places. You want 3 barbarians? I'm just going to stack you a bunch of minion type of creatures, right? If you want a 6 party that has a healer, a tank, a fighter, a rogue, a cleric, if you want it all balanced, I will make the narrative around that balanced gameplay. You and Vixie had a Bard Psionicist campaign. How the hell does that work? I don't know, but we make it work.
100%. 100%.
For me, I like it in practice, but I don't like it in implementation, if that makes sense.
Sure.
It's fun to actually play the game, but it's not fun to roleplay.
Fair enough.
So with spellcasting integrations, the powers were really where it was at for wizards and other classes. Like spells really got replaced with powers. It's just the powers could do different things on a spell level. So obviously you had each power clearly defined. You had action types, you had usage frequency, area and effect, and then conditions imposed. No spell slots or Vancian system prep. This was basically just you had it and you just used it as you could at will or daily. And that was basically just there was no concept of what you had to memorize or know. It was you had a cooldown. So once you knew the spell, that spell had a cooldown, whether you could use it infinitely or once a day or once an encounter. It just didn't matter. Once the cooldown was up, it was back. Okay. Super streamlined, super simple. Not my favorite, but was one of the easiest to get into.
Fair.
And then having, so an example of this in gameplay, say a wizard has an initiative of 17. So on their turn, they'll use Thunder Wave, which is a standard action. It has an area burst of 3 push, and it pushes enemies. Something like that would have, let's say so they use that. Then they move 1 square using shift for their move action. So they're not going to have an opportunity attack. But then they're also going to use Magic Hand, which is a minor action to interact with a lever. So so even though before this, in every edition before this, you could not cast more than 1 spell in a turn. This was one of the first times that they were like, hey, if a spell wasn't on the same level, you can cast multiple spells. You can cast a daily and an at will, as long as they weren't both standard. So it was the first time you can actually cast more than 1 spell on a turn. Interesting. As long as they weren't standard actions.
Okay. So again, actually very fair.
Very unique to 4th edition, I would say, is everywhere else it was 1 spell period, right? I mean, even in 5th edition, you can't do a cantrip in a leveled spell.
You can do just a cantrip and a level spell. You can't do 2 leveled spells.
Yeah, you can't do 2 level spells. So this was the first time that they were like, I guess your minor action was considered your cantrip. Your minor action spells, like minor hand, could have been considered your cantrips.
Well, generally speaking, your at wills, because you can just spam
that would
them.
have been your cantrips.
Those are your cantrips.
So so interesting way that they kind of approached it originally. And then, so let's go, I guess, into 5th edition. That was it. So now we're in 5th edition. I mean, this is only going to be 5th edition for 14, because again, I lost my 2024 book
for sure. That's super lame, yeah.
So we're just going to go really quickly, but everyone knows 5e from 2014. The structure and time flow rounds were 6 seconds, and each character takes 1 turn. within that 6 seconds. Of course, everyone's sharing initiative, or not initiative, everyone's sharing the same time frame in the round.
Right.
Initiative was a d20 with your dex modifier. Turns resolved in initiative order repeated each round. So no dynamic initiative. What you roll is what you roll. And movement can be split around other actions for the first time. So you can move, attack, then move. Whereas everywhere else, moves were more about positioning than they were about tactical use. Very unique to 5th edition. But again, something I think should be adopted to any edition you play. So I have that in high point.
For sure.
Unique to 5th edition, turn structure was streamlined for flexibility, allowing movement before and after actions, supporting a much more balance of tactics and narrative gameplay.
Okay.
Action types and terminology. So we have your action. So we got rid of standard, and now it's just action.
Got you.
Your action can be attack, cast a spell, dash, disengage, dodge, help, hide, ready, or search. These are all actions. No more standards, just actions. Bonus actions. These things include, these things were gained from class features, spells, or feats. Something like cunning action, healing word. A fun note, bonus actions were not granted freely. Bonus actions officially, by the core rulebooks, were not an official action. You did not have in your arsenal by default an action, a movement, and a bonus action. By default, you had your action, your movement, and then things could tell you get a bonus.
Interesting.
It is truthfully a bonus action. It is not part of your repertoire. You do not get to.
It's a very interesting way to think about it. I think that
That's
understanding it that way makes a lot more sense when things like action search happen, because a lot of people for a while were trying to argue, oh, I should get a whole nother turn, which is an action, bonus action, and all this other stuff.
But
no,
the thing
it's
is
just
bonus actions were you only gain them from feats, meaning something tells you as a bonus action, meaning I am giving you something on top of your repertoire. As a bonus action, you can now do this. A bonus action is not something that you have a list to choose from. It's not like, again, from level 1, I have an action and a move and a bonus action to choose from. The bonus action is something that is
with the thought
gained.
With that thought process, I can see somebody trying to say, well, if I'm getting this action from the feature, then I should be able to do as many bonus action things as possible. So if I have 2 different things giving me a bonus action, then I can do 2 bonus action things on my singular turn.
But it's not again, they're not adding, it's just, again, even as written, as a bonus action, right? So it's not saying that there's like the stacking involved of you're getting a whole new action. It's just that per this feat, you are getting 1 extra thing to do. Now, granted, you have 2 feats that do that, but you still only get 1. It's that whole thing of like,
and that would be like,
because again, an action is not something you get to choose to do. Something's giving you that action, but it's not part of your list of things to do.
no, I totally understand that.
I found that interesting when I was doing more of the research, because I rarely do that much for 5th edition because most people know about it. But as I read more into bonus actions, it is fascinating that most people feel like I can do an action and a move and a bonus action, but it's more of you can move an action and you may be able to be granted a bonus action, but it's not like a bonus action is something you can come up with.
Yes.
You never get to decide as the player what a bonus action is. You can't say, I'm going to do this new... You can't say, I'm going to pick up a rock with a bonus action unless something tells you
there are
can.
a lot of DMs that have moved things like drinking a potion
to a bonus
to
action,
allowing a bonus action, but you have to roll it, and then if you use it as a full action, you get
and
the
that's
whole
fine
benefit.
for homebrewing, but technically that's not how bonus actions work unless you grant them that. But again, that's where the funny part about bonus actions is that in this world.
But I'll say I don't know anywhere else that would articulate that it limits you to just 1 if that's not the case. Like I unless it's like in the wording of each bonus action item that says you
I'm
can
pretty
only
sure it's
do
I think it's in the player's handbook, but when it talks about the actions you can take during combat, I'm pretty sure it does specify what order, like, you can move an action or action and move or vice versa. But I do believe it does specify there is 1 of each. It's 1 action, 1 movement, 1 bonus action if you have them. So even you still only have the economy of a bonus action, but a bonus action is not something you get to choose. You don't get to choose what a bonus action is. You are granted a bonus action of a particular type. So it's a weird distinction that I wanted to make that I pointed out in my notes here, but I do find that interesting that a bonus action is not like an action that the player has available to them and just says, hey, I want to pick up this rock, so I'm going to use my bonus action to do it. You don't have a bonus action. If a feat says, as a bonus action, you can pick up a rock, now you can do that. But you do not have a bonus action, as in you don't have this vague concept of an action that's like a minor action, right?
Sure.
Bonus actions aren't minor actions where, well, if I describe something easy to do, I will use my bonus. You don't have a free bonus action. You were only ever given one that does a specific thing.
I mean, I do agree. I think that I will say a lot of times my players will say that they want to do something, and I will charge them a bonus action. Basically, I will allow them to do it, but then they can't do anything else that would cost them a bonus action.
I have no problems with that. As a DM, that is 100% what you should do. But what's funny is for all of those rules as written people out there, I have a feeling that the majority of those hardcore rules lawyers argue the exact thing you just argued, which is funny because it is not at all what the rules state. Like, this might be one of those rules that, by and large, everyone accepts the monopoly ruling, like the free parking ruling, that it's not in the core rule books. It's not a real thing.
Is it
but
not?
The free parking in Monopoly?
Yeah.
Never once has that been a rule.
Does it say anything about putting money into free parking, or if you land on free parking, you get the money?
It's literally free parking is 100% a free space that has no action whatsoever. The money that you put into the bank is supposed to go into the bank. The concept of people putting it in the middle and you getting it with free parking is 100% a homebrew rule that somehow back in the day before the internet went worldwide. That is the craziest thing about that rule, is it is so well popular, but yet that was before the internet. There was no rule book that ever, but people just did it. That was just how people play. But yeah, the idea is that back in the, before this, you had a thing called a minor action, which was an action that would not have taken, the place of an attack. But that's not what bonus actions are. You can only do what you're given, but bonus actions aren't something that, it's not an economy that you have. It's a gift that it's more like it's a coupon than it is an economy, right? Your action is economy that you get to spend, right? You have so much, economy. You have so much money that you can spend your attacks, but you can't spend your money on bonus actions. You can't break $1 of an attack into 4 bonus action quarters. Right. Bonus actions are a coupon that you get to redeem. Yeah. If certain things happen.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's a better way of putting it. All right. Your movement, you can move up to speed and it can be split. Reactions, you do get 1 per turn on another's turn, or 1 per round on someone else's turn. So this was the replacement of the what was it called? The immediate action that triggered off turn. Oh yeah. This was now your intent. Yep. And then you had free object interaction. So now drawing, sheathing weapons, opening doors, things of that sort, lighting a torch were now just considered a free object interaction. So these things were codified as free actions.
Now, from my understanding is you only get 1 free action.
Yep. So if you want to draw or sheath the sword or open a door, it's a free action, but you can only do it once. Exactly. Everything, you can only do 1 of these if you do them.
The way you were describing free actions when it came to playing with your DM, it made it sound like you got an unlimited number of free actions. Anything that was a free action literally didn't cost you anything. And
it was
because if you wanted to drop something as a free action, you could drop things 100 times if you wanted to. If you kept drawing something and dropping something and drawing something and dropping something.
But again, it only applied to each thing once. So if you dropped the sword and then picked it back up, you couldn't drop that sword.
Sure.
Again, very weird ways, but he really leaned into
But it was something that it had no limit. It was truly free.
The limit was basically per weapon. So like each of your hands had 1 free option, but once those hands used up that free option, even if you dropped whatever they did not get the free option back.
Sure.
So yeah. So
but technically, in this situation, it's like you as the character
get 1. Yes. And that's fine too. I think that having the codification that each of these can only be done once per round, but you don't get each of these once per round. Right. So yeah, so very fascinating how they do it. But again, one of those things the community just kind of does their own thing unanimously. Combat encounter handling. So encounters were, so interesting enough, 5th edition had this really interesting thing where starting out, they tried to go back and encourage more theater of the mind. Early on, a lot of like when they first brought back 5th edition in 2014, while they did support grid play, a lot of the rules were like the way that it read, a lot of it really was trying to go back to the origins of theater of the mind, which is funny because as it grew, it played more, it went the opposite direction. As they continued to get the supplementals and expand it, they realized that people had grown accustomed to a lot of the physical gameplay. A lot of people came to get used to the minis and used to the tabletop. So it's funny that when they reintroduced 5th edition, they tried to get away from all of the tactile stuff and said, hey, you guys can just play with your imaginations again. And people were like,
but I like it.
But my minis and my dice. Like, I like these things. So it is kind of funny that I would not say that today about 5th edition, but it did try to rekindle the theater of the mind crowd.
Okay.
Opportunity attacks trigger when a creature leaves your reach, unless you use disengage. So that was one of the bigger aspects of that. And readied action. So action plus a trigger turns a turns a reaction, or basically turns a action into a reaction when a certain trigger is met. So 5th edition was the first one to introduce readied actions.
I will say I always had a problem with, I guess not, but it was like it took 2 pieces of your action economy to ready an action, and I was like, it felt like.
How so? What do you mean by it took 2 actions?
So you had to spend both your action and your reaction to ready an action.
Oh, is that what 5th edition meant by that?
Yeah, so you have to spend your
I guess that makes sense. See, I always looked at it as like a reaction to me. Like, I don't do it that way at High Point. I think that if you ready an action, it is still your action. I think your reaction, because to me, a reaction is not something that you're anticipating. A reaction is something that you're not expecting, and it is literally your ability to pick up on it quickly and react to it. Mm-hmm. If I'm staring you down, waiting for you to move, my actions, like it's one thing to jump out of the way when you hear a loud sound and see like someone throws a ball and says, you know, like heads up, and you jump out of the way. That's reacting. If I'm looking at you, waiting for you to move to move like a race, like you move, I move, I'm like crouched. I'm prone. My muscles
like
are
it's more
ready.
Responding than reacting.
Exactly. I have prepped myself so my response time is going to be honed in. That to me is much more intentful. The reaction, I think, is much more of a, I wasn't expecting it, so how quickly am I, to respond? Like, yeah. It's a unique thing. I don't agree with them turning it into a reaction. I don't mind that cinematically. You're turning it into a. I like that it's cinematically you turn it into a reaction, but you're not mechanically turning an action into a reaction.
You're not spending a reaction as well.
But I get that you could also say that it's your focus is so important and so intent.
Yeah,
you're not going to be able to react otherwise. So
I can kind of get that too. So but it just. Yeah, with the way they set everything else up, it doesn't feel it doesn't feel like it's in alignment with the way everything else works.
Yeah,
it feels like it. Yeah.
All right, so spellcasting integration. We're almost done here. So most spells are actionable casting. So of course they're going to be taking your full action. Very few of them will have anything less than that. Some like Healing Word are a bonus action, and then you can even get some like Counterspell and Shield, which are a reaction. Yes. So there are variances, but the mass majority of them going to cost you your action. Mm-hmm. And then Concentration, you can maintain only one concentration spell at a time. So 5th edition leaned into that concentration mechanic we talked about earlier and said, hey, why not make that a thing for spells? Instead of concentration check with just when you take damage, what about a concentration for like the general concept of the spell? And then, of course, taking damage while you're concentrating equals a Constitution saving throw to maintain the spell. So it's more of they took the same Constitution mechanic that we saw introduced earlier, and then they really leaned into it and said some spells are just going to require.
I'm curious if any spells like in earlier editions had like maintained concentration, like spells that like lasted long periods of time.
They just lasted their time frame, and it was only when the first time we got it introduced, because before was when you took damage, it was automatically interrupted. Then the first time they introduced the concentration mechanic was only when you took damage, you had to just concentrate on not losing your
continuing
interact.
to cast the spell.
Continuing to cast it, but the spell, once it went off, would still last 10 minutes, a minute, however long the
So
spell
if
was
you
going to
went
cast.
down, it doesn't matter.
Correct. Spells kept on going.
Interesting.
So that's why 5th edition said, hey, we like this mechanic, but let's expand that to spells that would actually make sense that you would have to like maintain. Like again, think about Doctor Strange.
Sure.
Some spells you have to focus on. So they said, if that's the case, it's not just about taking damage in this and whether or not the spell goes off, but it's also taking damage and the spell ceases. So they were the first ones to make spells tied to the caster, which I'm not against.
I'm not either. I mean, I kind of like both.
Yep.
But
all right, so in a example of this, I don't really give it. I think everyone has an example, but if you have like a bard wins an initiative at 18, they can use a bonus action to do healing word on an ally within 30 feet. They can use their action of vicious mockery on a goblin, and then they can move 10 feet to get behind cover. Much more tactical in their uses. And then later down the road, the goblin will try to target them, but of course they weren't able to find them because they, were in cover. So they went for a different ally, but the bard would use their cutting words as a reaction to reduce their damage. So this is a way that you can just, highlight all of that, or not highlight, but, integrate all of those different types of action types. So a couple highlights here for key innovations. OD&D introduced initiative and abstract combat, but they did not have any formal action types or timing. First edition segments were introduced, casting times and weapon speeds also integrated with what segments you would attack, often confusing interaction rules because again, what happens when two people of different interactions ended up on the same segment. 2E introduced Thacko and gave clearer initiative and morale rules. It retained the segment confusion because it lacked clear action economy still. 3rd edition, we got standard move, full, swift, and immediate actions, and we also got grid combat introductions. Segments still reigned supreme, but we still had group initiative.
Yep.
Wasn't until 4th edition when we got minor actions, immediate interrupts, and powers as a combat structure. And we also got spell slots, but they did maintain the Vancian system. Or no, they got rid of the Vancian system. They got rid of spell slots and the Vancian system in favor of the specialty powers. And again, I misspoke on 3rd edition. They got rid of segments and group initiative for individualized initiative.
Gotcha.
Missaid that.
That's right. They were the first ones to use the D20 and the dexterity.
Yep. And then 5th edition, unified the actions, bonus actions, reaction system. We got the free movement. We got free movement splits between your action economy, and we got simplified casting times. We did lose the more complex action stacking and the granular tactics of back and forth, but as you can see, we still get quite a bit of opportunities. And that's it. That is the history of action economy. Hopefully, the visuals helped everybody keep away. We had a posture check a while back. Thank you.
Thank you.
But thank you so much. I'm curious to know if there was anything that y'all didn't know, anything that you guys were surprised about today. Because there's been quite a lot of changes out there. Gonna complete those. But yeah, I hope that the visuals helped for the read along. This was a lot of fun. I didn't change that to 5th edition, by the way. Apparently. So here's the 5th edition that, should have been there the whole time, but that wasn't. That's gonna be fun for the edit.
Yeah.
I might be able to actually just edit the bottom. Yeah, just the cut, because it doesn't show us moving on it. So yeah. But yeah, there you go. There was the history of action economy from 1st to 5th edition. That was a lot of fun. It's fascinating to see again the problems they ran into, the solutions they came up with, and the constant grind to make a better playing experience.
Yeah.
I will say that that's one thing that I always appreciate when we go through these history ofs.
Yeah.
Is really showing how the community influenced the creators, who then made it better, who then with those improvements influenced the community to find better improvements, right? It's just it's a constant cycle of back and forth, and it really does feel like, for the longest time at least maybe not until recently, it really felt like it was a community-led experience. Yes. Now maybe not so much. Maybe now it's more of the corporate, but I really felt like between 2nd and 4th edition, we had a lot of the community really leading this charge with figuring out what was broken, and the game really responding with how to make it better.
Yeah, I feel like shift happened when a lot of other media decided to see if they could find a formula for success, and they took that idea and was like, here, let's turn that formula and put it towards this game and just make it. And it doesn't come out that way. As you can see, people are still busting out homebrew,
Yeah.
like homebrew modifications and rules. It's they want freedom.
The thing
right?
is, I think they're in a dangerous position. Not a dangerous position, but they're in a unique position now because now they've finally hit the massive amounts of success they always wanted. But now you have so many people that it's impossible to keep everyone pleased. You know, before, back in first edition, it was probably a lot easier to keep the general community happy.
It's fair.
There's too much of the community now. There's too many communities. It's just gonna. It kind of makes
And
sense.
not
That they
all,
just
all
kind
these
of.
communities agree.
So it makes sense that you kind of have to do your own thing. But
Yep.
that mentality of we're so big, we can't make you all happy, you guys figure it out, is why we have homebrew rules and why we have things like Critical Role and Dimension 20 and High Point. And you know what I mean? Like these things exist because we're solving our own problems. And it's okay to do that. Which is why we exist here and
Big
why we
facts.
invite everybody
Big
to have an
facts.
open mind when it comes to D&D. Anyway, quick little YouTube outro. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us today on the exciting adventure of the history of action economy 1st through 5th. I hope you enjoyed everything that you saw today. Let us know in the comments what you were surprised about. Did you know any of these things? Did anything really, was anything really surprising to you? Did you not know about any of this stuff? Was there anything that kind of blew your mind, or is there any old rules that you're now going to try to bring into your new game? I'd really like to know what you're going to try to do. Let us know in the comments. Like and subscribe if you like this video. For those of you that are in Twitch right now, I'm dropping some links in chat. We have the link to the Discord and a link to our link tree, so you can see all of our social medias. Again, if you like the video, like and subscribe. It's really helpful. I'll probably just take that part out there. Subscribe. Anyway, again, if you like the video, hope to see you guys in the future. What do I want to say here? Yeah, okay, so like and subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. Cheers.
This is my friends.
I mean, I guess sometimes you just gotta just go with the classic and just end it. You know what I mean?
You do what you gotta do. You make it work.
All right. Well, that was fun. That was fun. I like it. You got a question from Cart in chat?
Cart. What do you got for me?
I didn't know that it was before my links. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff I learn when I'm researching this stuff that either is brand new to me or it's just like, I wonder, when I heard that inspired me to do my rule. Because, I read these things and I'm like, that's exactly what I do. But I didn't know that was a first edition. Like, it's just where I heard it or how I heard it in passing or in a supplemental. And you're like, I'm going to keep that, a little nugget for a while. But I'm glad everybody had it. Did you guys like the new visuals? That's going to be something that I'm going to be trying now. It's not easy to set up. It does take quite a bit, but I don't know. Did they actually add anything today? Was the history of better?
I appreciated it. I definitely appreciated being able to see what was going on. And, well, this is up to you, but if at all, I can always just go through and screenshot what's on here. But if at all you have the opportunity to just like archive whatever you have.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That would be dope. Even just send it to me over Discord.
I mean, I can either send it to you as it was displayed, or I can send it to you. I can send the raw data that I put into those, or I can just try to copy and paste it. But yeah, we can definitely set up a thing. I mean, maybe even when I set all of these up, maybe I can make like a project file every time, and then just send you a project file that has all the data already.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, just save it into the drive.
Right. Yeah, we'll figure that one out.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad everyone's enjoying the new changes. That's kind of the whole point. I've been doing some research, and yeah, I actually did a lot of research this week on on D&D, the category in Twitch, and I think honestly, now more than ever, I think that we are going in the absolute right direction. I think that we have every opportunity because this category is absolutely fucking broken. The top producers compared to the not top producers is staggering. Like the top 3 streamers have over 100,000 followers and average hundreds, if not thousands of viewers whenever they go live. The top 3. The next down from that has tens of thousands of followers, like less than 40,000 followers, and averages like 50 views.
Okay.
That's the discrepancy. It goes literally from like 50 views to 300 to 10,000, and it goes from like 30,000 followers straight to 100K followers. It's like,
That's wild.
but I did some research. It took me a while. I had to look through all the trending times and all of that, because I did notice that there was this weird peak. Same time every week, at midnight or very late at night, there is a fucking massive spike in D&D, the category.
Like of stream people that are streaming?
Yeah, like with the viewership, like the actual like conglomeration of how many people watch D&D spikes regularly every week, and it took me a while to figure out who the channels were. Critical Role is one of them.
Okay,
but they're not even the one that spikes the most, surprisingly enough. There's one that fucking blows them out of the water.
I don't know if Dimension 20 is on Twitch. I don't think they are.
I forget the name off the top of my head, but I know you know them.
It's the one with the dude with the long hair.
So if anybody's been on YouTube and in the D&D space, if you came across the YouTube shorts of the animated D&D, and if you've ever come across the shorts with the demonic clown that won't die, that's them. They stream twice a week.
I don't doubt it for a second, dude.
Bro, like this category, any other day, barely on a good day pulls 100 views. They pull like 3,000 every time they go live. And here's the greatest part. Like, they're big because of YouTube. We know why Critical Role is big. They're big because their YouTube's huge. They do the skits, they do the animated stuff. But I've done a little bit of, I perved their stuff.
Sure.
If you were to if you just go to their stream and just watch midstream, there is nothing. There's not a single thing that you would, if you were watching them for just a 5-minute clip and went anywhere and just randomly watched another streamer for 5 minutes, there's nothing discernible. Because I was like, okay, I was really doing some research, like what distinguishes these people with 1 view versus the people with 30 views? And then I was like, how, who cares about Critical Role? They're famous. But like these guys, I'm like, I did the research, I looked at their history, I looked at their YouTube page, I looked at all of their social medias, and I'm like, the 2 things you have going for you, if you've been doing it for a long time and so you've gotten famous, but you also have that big YouTube following. Now, I'm not saying that they don't deserve to have the live views, and I'm not saying that they haven't earned it. It's just that, sometimes you can look at a thing and go, oh, I see the quality. I see why. But then you see this where it's like you have the same camera quality, you have the same layouts, you have the same content, but what makes you different? And it's like, it's more than likely because you got famous elsewhere, right? Twitch is not a place that you grow.
I found them mostly on TikTok. Like they blow up on. I think it's the shorts that they do,
and that's what I'm saying. So, but the more I researched their content, the more I researched their gameplay, and I'm like, honestly, we are still doing something that no one else on this platform is doing. Very, very few people on YouTube are doing. I mean, there's some people who do what we do, but in much smaller segments. Like there's the other guy that does his animated shorts where he does like look backs on certain old school spells. He's the dude with the curly red haired dude.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. He always has that. He has that other like friend he likes to argue like original rules with.
Yeah.
So like they do things like us, but not to the extent that we do. So I'm thinking we're in the right niche. Obviously, we're in the right category because this category isn't as dead as I thought it was. This category obviously has potential.
There's
it's not the potential of, we're not looking for the people who are on Twitch watching other people. We need to bring people to Twitch to want to watch us live. That's the big difference. And I think that's what's going to set us aside from other streamers, because I think most streamers just stream to stream and hope people come into their channel, right?
Yeah.
These other ones, the biggest ones, all of them are big elsewhere. TikTok, YouTube. So we're doing something unique that no one else is doing. We'll eventually get into gameplay, which I think High Point will probably be more than complex and gritty enough for most people's enjoyment.
Sure.
But I really think the more shorts we produce, the types of content we do with all of our tangents, if we can eventually get an animator, like, I think that's it. I really think, and I'm not saying that animated shorts is the key to D&D,
Sure.
TikTok and YouTube, but it is because a lot of people are either doing skits or they're animating it to make it more appeasable. If we can get into one of those sides, and I'm not a good writer, so I don't do skits, but with the type of content we produce, if any of our content, even though it's not gameplay, if someone could animate just the concepts that we talk about,
Dude, I 100% think that's because that happens so much. People are podcasting, and then people will animate what they're talking about, not necessarily, you know, people doing skits or anything. Like,
exactly, and that's what I think that if we get into that, the Legends of Adventurous, yes, that's them, and that's what I'm saying. So it's like if they they're here twice a week, but that's it, like us. But if they can average thousands of viewers because of their fame on YouTube, I need to stop worrying about the fact that we're only at 100 followers. And we're, you know, again, it's because I need to stop worrying about being discoverable on Twitch and realize that, again, we gotta love the process. We have the content.
Yep.
It's really getting it in front of the right people. But I was afraid that just Twitch was going to eventually just be the medium at which we do this.
Sure.
But seeing the numbers those people pull,
because people want to go be a part of that. They see it all the time, and they're like, "Hey, let me
see,
let me watch,
it really reinvigorated me to just like,
dude,
like
it's good stuff.
All these changes I'm making, the reason why I kind of finally like today was like, no, I'm doing this because not only does the community want it, and we're gonna do what the community wants, but seeing that was like, no, I need to put more effort in because I know that, you know, I know that we don't need to stand out. Like, they don't stand out when they're live. They don't stand out. They pull in their audience, but I wouldn't mind also standing out. I wouldn't mind being the person that has a large audience and you can see why.
Yeah.
Like what we did today. Like, I wouldn't mind putting in that little extra effort to look a little bit different, to be a little bit different. Our topic, our content, we are different already. But how do you get people to see that right off the bat without spending time with us? So I really think that having, just like what we did today, something a little bit new. And I'm excited. I'm really excited for the new layouts. I have a whole bunch, like I've been, like, I have a whole bunch of new things now. Like I have like the showdown, like is, you know, I have like different ones for like, cool. History of doing a review. I have like, I have to like change the thumbnails and stuff each time, but I'm trying to get different scenes and stuff. So when we do this, we can just, you know, get right into it.
Yeah.
Have more visuals. I like this. I like the side by side for like more podcasty stuff when we're introing and outroing.
I do too.
And that will really help with editing too. Having this kind of stuff for the live stream, and then I can just cut out anything with this screen, and then we only have the stuff. So
okay.
Yeah, we're working on it, but we're working on it because we know now more than ever it's possible. It's just, it's time and effort, and we have the effort. Now we just gotta put in the time.
Mm-hmm. And just keep honing, keep moving through, keep seeing what we like and what we don't like. You know, other people can give us their reviews, and we can either solidify that this is what we want to do, or take it into consideration and make adjustments. So I love what we're doing. I think it's great. I think we're I'm gonna start posting more of our created content on TikTok, like I do with Shazam. Okay,
a lot of people seem to like that one.
That was very cool.
Yeah, I've really gotta push to get more TikTok content. I did a reply, just a random ass one. I was just flipping through.
That. Yeah.
Randomly, I was like, you know what? I got really inspired to respond to it, which I rarely ever do.
I think that's perfect.
Yeah, it kicked off. I'm surprised I haven't gotten anything from the like the creator hasn't liked my comment or anything.
Okay.
But no, I mean, a bunch of people. I mean, I was stagnant at like 680, 690 followers for the longest time. In the last 2 days, we've gotten like 30 followers.
I'm telling you, I really think those actual stitched videos do a lot.
Which is funny because it's not doing a lot in viewership. It just got a lot of engagement.
Yeah.
But the one before that, the one where I just straight out, it's a very short one, but it's asking the community, the TikTok community, or D&D TikTok, what did they think of Druid Magic? That was a fun one.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you haven't looked through that one. Go look through the
I don't
comments.
think I've seen the comments on that one yet.
There's a
but-
ton of comments. People got some really cool ideas.
Okay. Very nice.
Yeah, if you haven't seen us on TikTok, go see us. It's on the link tree. More stuff. Yeah, more links. I have a wedding to go to this weekend, but hopefully by next weekend I will fix the Discord onboarding. I really want to get that automated, and we have some new automated stuff coming down the pipeline. I'm working in some integrations to Discord, so obviously we have our go live, but we will have when videos post to YouTube, I'm also getting that integrated into Discord, so those will get posted once we do that. So yeah.
And I apologize, Cart, to answer your question. I did get your submission in the submissions. I will likely need to hit you up to figure out what goes where. Just because I know that you had submitted the new Tarrasque-born, because this is going to be the actual race, versus the old Tarrasque-born, which I believe we came up with a new name for. I have to look.
The Trask Shade.
The Trask Shade. Okay. And so, but what you sent me was called the Tarrasque-born module, and I feel like it's got a lot more info than just race updates. So
Interesting.
I want to make sure that I got everything pieced out and know what's all together, and what's not. And maybe I know one of the things you and I were talking about is literally a module review, is reviewing different modules. Maybe eventually we can do community modules if that's what this is. If it's literally like an entire, hey, you can take this as a DM and run your players through this Tarrasque-born module that I created that is this Tarrasque-born world and blah, 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 and chests and all kinds of things. So if that's what this is, that is very, very cool, and I will be really excited to see what we can do with it. But if there's something directly that you want me to update, because I know the next review that we had was supposed to be
Soul just asked what the next review is.
So theoretically on the list, the next one is the Path of the Primal Warden, but I believe that part you were asking if we could do the Tarrasque-born race instead.
Oh yeah, that one got pushed up.
So
Also keep in mind I have a wedding to go to on Sunday. We're gonna have to stay overnight because it's like 4 hours away. So tentative on Monday stream. I'm still wanting to do one, but I may have to cancel it depending upon when we get back. So
Sure.
I just may not have it in me to do it. So I'll keep you guys posted. I still want to, so I'm not canceling it just yet. It would suck to have to cancel last second, but yeah.
Sure.
Solo Kage review stream.
Hey, I don't know how that's gonna work.
I know, yeah. Just break into the studio, just get everything set up. You know know how to do it all, right? I mean, you know all the buttons to push.
Totally. I can barely function in my own stream, let alone run this masterpiece. But
So yeah, we'll figure that out. But depending upon how Monday goes, we may or may not do a Monday stream. Yeah, I don't know. I'm happy I did this. History of. I still want to do history ofs, but I think I want to limit them like once a month. I don't think I want to like burn out. They're fun, but I feel like there's a lot more we could be doing.
Sure.
And a lot more we could be creating. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to do like a sub. I mean, maybe we should do a subletting subclass next Friday. Are you here next? Wait, no. You already had the Friday that you were gone. I think you're here.
I should be, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do subletting subclasses next week.
Okay. I'm not mad at it. I love me a good sublet.
I really think that we need to do some creating more, and I think that with the new visuals and everything, and with the new editing that I'm doing, because I think this week, Monday and Tuesday, I'm going to edit and post. Next week, I'm going to do the subclass showdown.
Okay.
I want to try that one next.
Cool.
Because Alucard, the video Alucard is just not doing shit.
I thought the showdown was already edited.
The showdown, no. The only edited ones we've done are the Diamond Dog review, History of Enchantment, subletting subclasses, the Rune Giant Warlock, and then Alucard.
Okay.
But the next one will be the subclass showdown, and then after that, it'll probably be. I'll probably try to get like the rest of the created ones going if I can, or at least all of this new content. Now the new content with all of the visuals, I think, is going to be the biggest priority, because the old ones, even Shazam, didn't look that great because it was on the whiteboard. Now that we have the visuals, you know. But I do need to just focus on getting everything that we have made though into a TikTok post.
Oh, got you.
It just takes a lot of converting, because I have to convert the files into individual pages. So I have to like take it, convert it to PDF, then convert that one PDF into each individual page, you know, like print to PDF one page at a time. Then I have to convert each page into an image, and then I can upload those to TikTok.
You just need images of individual page files. I can do that pretty quickly with the program that I have. So if you want me to put that someplace for you for a lot of these.
I mean, it really doesn't. It's not like it takes me hours. It's just more of a, it's like, it's just click that, save it to the desktop. Okay, change it to this. Now I can, and then I have to do all of that, upload it to Google Drive so I can access it on my phone, so I can upload it to TikTok. Because TikTok, while they will let you upload video via desktop, they will not let you upload photos via desktop.
What?
Yeah, you can only upload videos from desktop, but you cannot, or like the browser, you have to use your phone for the pictures. So it's just, it's more annoying than anything, but at least we get the quality for sure. Like it maintains the quality and you can see everything. So I was really happy with the Shazam post. It didn't get as much traction as I was hoping for, to be honest. Like, I was kind of expecting that one to like really kind of kick off. But I mean, that one got 368. The next one, the asking people about Druid magic, got over 600. So, you know, it's hit or miss. It's hit or miss. But we are over 700 followers. I think once we hit 1,000, we'll see a turn for the better.
Okay.
So I think that's the next next milestone that we got to get.
Yeah. Especially on TikTok. I feel like they treat people who have more than 1,000 followers different.
Yeah. I guess when you can start making money or something. I don't know.
Oh. You can go live on TikTok.
Yeah, the Shazam roadmap, I think, was a really cool post, and I would like to think, I think that's going to be the thing I do the most, is posting the roadmaps.
Yeah, I think that's going to be super cool.
Once you get Alucard finished, I will definitely post that soon.
Okay.
And then you enjoyed the Shazam build? Yeah, the Shazam was really, really cool. I'm very happy about that one.
I'm gonna try. I got the next couple of weeks off, so I'm gonna try and get a lot of the creations put up and in our MGS builds channel, so that we can actually start putting those out there.
Okay, this one looks like it's for you again. Something more about the submissions.
Oh, the highlighted message.
Yep. It was more about submissions. All right, we'll clear this up, and then we'll probably take off
here. Can you read that word? Magnum
opus? It's my magnum opus. Oh, it's like their like piece de resistance. It's the final of all finals. It's the last thing they'll ever need to write.
This most recent submission. So please correct me if I'm wrong. The most recent submission is Taraskborn module, an entire module, not just a race.
Module.
I looked at, actually, let me open it back up. Did I close it? I did.
Well, it's already too late. Well, let's not unpack that now.
Fair enough.
We'll have to discuss what that means, because I know that we've had future plans for like module testing and things of that sort. So we'll have to, that one might have to be something that we unpack and figure out for a future stream.
I will get with you, Cart, and we will hash out exactly what's coming up this upcoming Monday, or if we don't stream the next time.
Yeah. Just because, I mean, if that's not a standard review, I don't want to just throw that on, especially with the wedding and everything. So let's probably tentatively plan, if we do stream on Monday, it'll probably be the Taraskborn, since Cart's up next anyway. And then we'll have to figure out how exactly we can integrate a module, whether it's going to be part of the testing that we do, because we do want to do module testing, but that's probably going to be offline. So we're probably going to do like recorded stuff for YouTube. So depending on if we review it versus test it, it may depend on what kind of video we make out of it. So, you want to make sure you have your game steps awake for it. Unless it's going to be the next one, I don't know how far Kage has planned out. I know we try to keep the plan pretty loose, so I don't know if you know how far ahead.
When are we expecting my sentient review? It's the next review for you, but I believe we've done a review of yours somewhat recently, so it might be a couple of weeks. Let me actually take a gander. When was the last Soul review? Yeah, you were just before Pokeniner, and Pokeniner was last week, so it'll be a little bit.
A couple weeks.
But not too bad, not too long. But Sentient will be your next review.
Gotta figure out. Maybe I don't know. Maybe we're gonna have to like just start rotating Fridays. Maybe there'll be like a history of, then a sublet and subclass, then a like a pop culture build, and then maybe the fourth will be like an extra review day. So maybe like you know, we just rotate Fridays.
Sling a singular review day on a Friday, something like that.
Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll just to help get more, because then that would be one extra review every month. Not a ton, but we'd actually be able to get through it. So
sure.
Yeah, maybe we'll add more review. I don't know. We'll see how. Let's get the add-ons added on, and 100%. Then we'll figure it out. So
making it look good.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we're gonna kick it out from here. Thank you all so much for joining us. It's been fun. This was actually a fun topic. I'm actually glad that we got to cover this one. This one was so much easier to do than the history of what it means to be magical.
Oh.
But yeah, no, this one was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys like the new loadout. Keep an eye out for Discord with polls and stuff. We really do want your feedback. We want your suggestions. We want to know what you want to hear about, what topics you want to have. We are here for you. As much as I would love to be egotistical and just imagine that everybody wants to like listen to me and hear what I have to say, I'm not that egotistical. I don't have that kind of that thought. So for me, I think I have good ideas. Like I think I have good ideas, but a lot of the times I'm questioning whether or not people want to hear that. Because you know what I mean? Like there's so many times where you can be a creator and say, hey, here's what I want to create, but no one's going to tell you that what you create is bad. You just have to like realize no one's watching you to realize it's bad. But when people are around, it's like, I know you're around because you enjoy it, but I know it could also be better. So like,
that's why I have a hard time with bad, because one person's bad is another person's great. So if these people aren't watching it, is it bad, or are the people that want to watch this don't know where it's at? And
that's my thing is like, I know it's not bad. It's just more of a, we have a decent sized community, but let's face it. It's like out of the 100 people that follow us, like it's 6 of y'all that show up. Like,
sure.
And I'm not upset at that at all. Like there's nothing to scoff at that. That's going to be the ratio, right? There's always going to be the hardcore group. There's going to be the generalized group, and then there's going to be the fringe group. But
so I will say this, just for me, like I follow some people and I kind of want to know when they're live, and sometimes I'll pop in and I'll
Which is funny because I don't follow anybody I won't watch live.
Yeah, it's like
I'm completely different.
It's just when people are live, what am I doing? Like I'm never really there for, like, sometimes I'll go and I'll look and if I happen to be on while they're live, that's what I follow them for. Or I might, if I'm super curious about something that happened, I might go back and look at their old videos or something like that. But most of those people are going to be on YouTube anyway, so I can just...
And that's why I get it. I get that we're going to have people who come in and feel the hype and follow and then never come back, and that's fine. Like I'm not upset with who we have following. It's always going to be a slow growth, but that's the point though, right? Is if we just suddenly had 1,000 people in here, to be completely honest, like the larger your audience, the less their interests matter, right? Because the larger your audience, you kind of get into this bad situation where it becomes a vocal minority. And if you listen to your audience when they're too big, you tend to only appease a very small amount of people who are the loudest ones, who are telling you what they want. But at this stage, it's almost the exact opposite, right? Like I don't want to make a stream that is Soul's perfect stream.
Yeah.
Because we're not here just for Soul. We're here for a much larger audience. And if we only do the stream for Soul or for Hecate, that's all we're going to get is Soul and Hecate. Sure. But at least understanding what brings them here, what keeps them coming and what will bring them back, right? What will get them to find other people, or have they shown us to other people? And what do those people think, right? Like, is it just not enough for them, right? So that's kind of where I'm at, is we're in the best time to listen to our audience, because we know what we want and we're not going to be dissuaded to go against what we want to do. But we're still in a good position to where we don't have a vocal minority. We just have the community.
Yeah.
And who shows up, I want to make more content for. You know what I mean? Like that's how subclasses and these were great ideas. You and I like just immediately were all about these ideas, but it wasn't until the community responded to them that we were like, we have something here.
Sure. Exactly.
And that's the difference. I can come up with good ideas, but you don't know what that's going to do until you put it into practice. And that's why I want to know from everybody. Like, if you guys like, that's why I put the polls in there.
Perfect stream. Y'all already do.
But you know what I mean? It's like that's
the
idea, right? Like that's why I put the polls in Discord. Yeah. That's why I ask questions. That's why community streams are 100%, community run and voted on. It's just I love the idea. Every community I've ever been in, like online, the best ones are the ones that I feel like I interact with and that I mold, that I shape,
that you're a part of.
And you don't see that very much anymore, where it's more of a, hey, you just pay and I give you stuff. I give you extra stuff that no one else gets if you give me money. But I much prefer the idea of going live, knowing that those that are there watching it chose to watch this. Not just chose to show up, but like, we told you we'd show up today and you said this is what you want to see and here it is. You know what I mean? Like there's something way bigger to that than just, hey, a streamer I like is doing that thing that I like. Right? But it's more of a, hey, the streamer I like is doing the thing I asked them to do. I feel like that's so much more impactful. And I feel like it's more impactful for us because I know the stream is going to be great because it's what y'all want.
Sure.
So anyway, that's enough rambling for today. Thank you all so much. You've been amazing. I hope you guys had a fantastic week. I hope you guys have an even better, phenomenal weekend ahead of you. I have a wedding. We may or may not be back on Monday, but if we do, we'll have a review. If not, we'll be back next Friday, probably with the subletting subclasses. Yeah. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of y'all's weekend. If you see us online, stop in, say hi. We would love to we'd very much appreciate the company. But otherwise, y'all do you. Part of over 200 Discord servers, but only talking like 5 of them because you feel closer to the community in those 5 than the 2. And exactly it, right? I'm part of plenty of servers and I regularly purge them if I have no purpose other than updates. You know what I mean? Like if I'm only in there to catch updates, I'll probably end up leaving it.
Yeah.
Like I very rarely get into Discords that feel engaging. And that's why I put so much effort into the Discord. Why each channel has the little emoji that is as close to representing as what I want. Yeah. I want the chat or the Discord not just to look intuitive, but I want it to feel alive.
Yeah.
I want people to go in there and not just be like, oh, well, there's where everyone's chatting. And then there's where what appears like a friends group is chatting. I want you to walk into our Discord and be like, holy shit, like there's artists, there's editors, like there's regular people, there's games going on. Wait, there's like D&D questions. Wait, there's a whole section for the stream. There's a whole section just for chat. Like I want you to walk in and be like, okay, I know where I'm going to go. Because there's some Discords you walk in and you're just like, I have no idea what's going on here. There's just chat rooms everywhere.
Yeah.
I feel like ours is a little bit more you walk in and you kind of like, oh, okay, I see where I need to migrate to.
Interesting. No, I feel that. I totally feel that.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for sticking with us this whole time. We do appreciate you guys. Have a good rest of your night. Have a good weekend. We'll see you all either Monday or next Friday. Cheers.
Deuces, man.